Hey, everybody. I'm back from vacation and I had to do a stream. And luckily, we're blessed enough to have Ceiling Fan Man join us. I asked him last minute, but I knew I had to get him on a show as I've been on his show a couple of times. Anyways, welcome to the show, Ceiling Fan Man.
Thank you, JT. I really I enjoy our conversations that we've had, and I enjoy your shows. So glad to be here.
Yeah, brother. So, anyways, we've connected a few times, and I'm sure I mirrored a stream that we all did. So I'm sure a lot of you guys know Ceiling Fan Man, but for those who don't, obviously, probably explain your name, explain what it is you do on your channel, and yeah, a little testimony if you want to.
Okay, no, I have no problem with it. So when I started realizing all the different things that we all talk about, the lies of the world and so forth, mine started with somewhere I saw a stream that said satellites are fake. They're only cartoons. And so I did my web search, and sure enough, if you type in satellite in space and you hit images, it's all cartoons. There's not a single picture of an actual satellite in space. And then you also have to ask yourself, if you're seeing a satellite in space, is there a secondary satellite with a camera that's taking the picture? Because how else are you seeing it? So when I started going down that quote rabbit hole, as they say, I looked into some of these projects, because one of the things NASA does, and I don't know where your audience is on NASA, but they're complete liars.
They're not fans of them.
Okay, good. So we're on board there. And so one of the things that I looked into was all the money that they spent on these programs. And they had this satellite program that was the Mariner. I think it started with the Mariner 5 or 6, and then there was the 7 and 8. And when I got to the Mariner 9, I just couldn't deny it anymore. When I was actually on someone else's live stream, and I was only a caller. I wasn't doing my own videos and stuff yet. And they were asking me, what I was talking about. I was mentioning these satellite things and how I looked at all these projects, and they had it on the screen, and they said, "Is there any other thing you wanted to say?" And I said, "Well, as I look at it now, it looks like a ceiling fan." And the Mariner 9, which is in the thumbnail, that's to what is that, to the right of JT?
Yeah,
it's also it's still there on Wikipedia, this picture of the Mariner 9 flying around Mars. And that's what's usually on my green screen behind me. But if you can see it, they still have the light chain right there, like it wasn't even photoshopped out. And so and so that's how it came about that this name kind of stuck to me, because that was sort of like the first thing that I was discussing on air, and the satellite. So that's how that came about. And I like the name. But and so my progression was, yeah, there you go. There's the Mariner 9. And if you
that looks totally real.
Look at the Mariner 8 and 7, and they all look like ceiling fans to me now. And so so that's where that all came about. And my progression started was my wife and I just at the same time had time off of work. We really worked our whole lives since we were like 18 and or probably 14. Yeah, look at some of those other ones there.
That's unbelievable.
Ridiculous. Yeah. And
they're laughing at us.
Right in our faces. Yeah, there's the Mariner. I can see the 7 over there, one of those. Yeah. Look at that.
I mean, it truly is unbelievable. Yeah, like I think most people would just see your avatar and say, "Well, that is a ceiling fan." So it's strange.
Yeah. Look at that one.
They don't get the correlation between. Yeah, that's actually what they say these satellites look like.
See that blue stamp looking thing? Look at the one next to it. You went past it. Go back up.
Let me see.
See that? It looks like a stamp to the end. On the other side of the end, all the way down. Keep going. Going. The one right before that is the one I was saying. There.
Look at that.
Gosh. So that's the quote antenna, but no, that's just the thing that hangs it from the.
I mean, it's like literally, did they forget to crop out the pole that is connected to the ceiling?
Yeah, well, you have to ask yourself, did they forget, or does no one care? You know what I mean? They've gotten to the point where people just accept it and they don't care. So
they're like, that's fine.
Yeah,
They don't care about that.
they don't care. They're not watching. So that's how that came about, and I found out that all the different lies in the media, of course, and that started because we had time off of work, and I had the news quote on in the background, and I saw some discrepancies on how it was shown on one channel versus how it was shown on another. They actually edited the video. I could see it, and that was weird from the beginning. And then I got to, I think it was more like going to Mars or one of those landings they were doing. I was all excited to see it, and they shot the thing up, and you didn't see anything. Once again, it was cartoons, and it was somebody on a radio going, "It's landing, 5, 4, 3, it's down," and that was it. You know, it was on in the background. So I started realizing all of that space and everything was fake, and that took me through. I went through the political things and saw that, for a while there, I was thinking that Trump was here to save us. And then I went through the Q people, and then I got out on the other side. I went, oh my God, all those are more traps to just
Mhm.
keep you in that dichotomy of, they're still talking to this day, truth drops of quote, truth drops of Q that they talked about in 2018. Like they're still sitting there on their couches, waiting and eating popcorn. It's like it's unfortunate. I'm not upset or laughing at the people that are in it because I was in it firsthand, and then realized it's all just part of the same thing. It's if you get out of this one, they trap you in that one kind of thing. If
Mhm.
you can get out of the politics, then go for the deep state idea. When yet they're all deep state, all the whole
Right.
government works
I think the one
together.
thing that people like Q and maybe even Trump himself have done well is like pointing out evil, right? So like,
Mhm.
yeah, so like Q, I remember when they were talking about everything. Yeah, I remember saying like, yeah, they're right about lots of things, but their solutions are obviously wishful thinking. They're just pie in the sky, and it's like, oh, don't worry, we've got this. And so that's the real dangerous part. Is I guess that's the false light is being able to expose the evil and then say, but don't worry about it because Trump's got it. This other person's got it. He's going to take care of you. And then like, yeah, but the red pill or the black pill is like, no, there's no white hats. Are you kidding me? Like, yeah, this grow up. No, there's no white hats.
They work together and they're working against us, and the people that like yourself, that add in the Bible and the teachings there's no man coming to save us, only
Mhm.
God is going to do that. And are these people used in different times to push through the path that we're supposed to be on for God's purpose? Absolutely. But just like in the Bible, you can read through Chronicles and Kings and all that. There was good ones and there was bad ones, but they all ended up doing God's will. And so I look at politics as good cop, bad cop. If you don't like the guy that's on the blue team, we'll throw in the guy that's on the red team. You don't like that one, we'll throw in the woman that's on the blue team. We'll throw, it's just it's the same thing over and over. And the agenda continues on no matter who's in office. I mean, there's people that still to this day, a lot of them think that God placed Trump there because now he's, had the bullet through the ear and all this, and God saved his life. And hey, the problem I have with that is this. I put out there, it was funny, about a week before he did this, I said, I'd like to have anyone send me anything that Trump's ever said that, he has found God, especially after the shooting, right? And what did he say after that? He goes to a Christian grouping, and
Mhm.
he specifically says he's not a Christian.
Yeah,
And so,
that was weird the way he said that too. It was almost like did he misspeak? But he said it. He like, yeah, I'm not Christian. Like he says, I'm not Christian because I remember seeing that a bunch, and I'm like, that's just it's such
yeah.
a weird thing for him to say.
And so when you look at, say, like the what was it, the RNC convention, and they had that gal come out and she said a prayer to some Indian
Oh
god,
yeah,
and right, it's like, so when you say that he's believes in God, what God? You know what I mean? Because it's obviously not the God of the Bible. If he's not Christian, then by technicality he's a heathen. I mean, a lot of people get upset when you use that word because they think it's this negative connotation, which it can be,
which it
but it,
is.
right, but it specifically means, and by definition, someone that doesn't believe in the real God, the true God of the Bible. That's it. Everyone else is a heathen according to those parameters.
or he believes he's real, but he doesn't walk in faith. And I think that's like as like was it saying James, the demons believe God is one and they shudder when they hear his name, but
Mhm.
that doesn't mean anything because they're not serving him. I
Yeah.
thought the
Well,
one thing that was interesting I saw from Trump this weekend was something about how he wanted to deport people who were pro-Palestinian, they were or anti-Israel. Deport them to where? I'm pretty sure he was talking about American citizens, right? I mean, like that. Obviously, that is
look,
insane.
that's why I'm
Like
saying
that is absolutely insane. Well, I mean, it's like everybody's seeing the pictures. JD Vance, Trump, both putting their hands on the Wailing Wall, which, as biblically, that ain't part of the temple.
no.
Jesus said, "Not one stone will be left on top of the other one." That Wailing Wall is not part of
No.
the second temple. Definitely not part of the first temple.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like we know who these people who control our politicians, and they all make a point to show us that when when Netanyahu comes to town and he's literally getting in front of Contra saying very inflammatory things like trying to get us into war.
Mhm.
I mean, that to me, that was like when I heard some of the stuff he was saying, I was like, this is offensive to me. Like this foreign leader coming in here talking about a war involving us. Like,
Well, it's interesting too.
know
I
your
think
role.
one of the
Oh, I guess
things
he does
about
know his role though.
well, the fact that I feel that one of the reasons that God woke me up is I was born and raised Jewish. And so when I read the Bible and it says that in those last days, there's going to be Jews that, say they are, but they're not. They're synagogue of Satan, and they'll have the star Moloch, which, that's what's flying in that flag. And so it's all written about in there. And people get confused, I believe, with the names and stuff because to be Jewish, you're from the tribe of Judah, but there was 12 tribes. And so, like Moses and Aaron, they're from the tribe of Levi, where all the priests and stuff came from. And so they were before that with Abraham, they were Hebrews.
Right.
There was no country of Israel until the Rothschilds made that in the 40s. And so when God in the Bible is talking about his chosen children, they were the Hebrews, and from there you got the 12 tribes, and one of them was tribe of Judah, and from there you got Jews. But when God talks about the children of Israel, in my mind, he's not speaking about this country that didn't exist. He's talking about the children of Jacob, whose name became Israel, and that's it. And then when you go and you look at how lineage goes down in the Bible, it's passed down through the father. This guy begat this one, and this guy begat, right? But then when you go into like the religion of Jewish religion, it's through the mother. So I think there's a whole bunch of people that think they're Jewish, possibly, and by biblical speaking, maybe they aren't. I don't know how it all works.
Well,
but
there's the
mother now.
I think here's where it gets a little bit confusing. Is you have obviously the promises to Abraham, go through Isaac, then go down to Jacob, who gets renamed Israel, and so he has 12 sons, and then Joseph has 2 sons. So it's almost more like they have like 13 tribes at one point when they're leaving Egypt with Moses and they're going into the land. Okay, so obviously at some point King David becomes king, Saul becomes king, but King David unifies Israel and Judah together because there was 2 nations. And then through Solomon they were both together. Then there's the schism when I think it's Solomon's son rebels. It was Rehoboam. He because God puts a spirit in him. The kingdoms are divided again, and so then eventually Israel kind of just goes on their own path with Jeroboam, and they go like completely off the wall. Judah kind of remains faithful to God for a while, and I think it's Judah Judah and Benjamin are together basically, and Ephraim is kind of Samaria, Israel. Well, they rebel totally. And at one point, Assyria takes them into captivity. The day of the Lord happens there. And then eventually Nebuchadnezzar does the same thing to Judah. Well, during the captivity, that's when Cyrus the Great actually makes a call for all the people to come back into the land. So then if you were part of Jacob, you could come back into the land of Judah to go around the temple. And then that's when they all became Jews. Or they became all from Judea. So even if you weren't part of the tribe of Judah or the tribe of Benjamin, they actually all came back to that land. So then but obviously they were all like, again, like you have like somebody like Saul, who became Paul. He was of the tribe of Benjamin, but was he a Jew? He was not really from Judah's line. And I think that's when you get into the confusing parts of like, okay, so who was a Jew? And I think that's probably why you see biblically, you can see like they're saying who they are. These people are claiming to be, but they're not. And then eventually, I think that's when Paul starts to talk about like do not get into these contentious arguments about genealogies, unfruitful conversations, because that's when he's like, a true Jew is somebody circumcised on inside their heart.
Yeah.
Jesus is saying, if you were children of Abraham, you'd be saying the same, you'd be doing the same works as him. You'd be happy to see me, but instead you're trying to kill me. Yeah. And so that's why like the bloodlines, the family trees, it is confusing. Because at this point, obviously nobody could even know. Nobody's got the genealogies to go back to Jacob now. I mean, maybe there's some, but I don't believe it. And I think that's like the big contentious thing is like, what about the people in Israel now? Yeah, even if they were all in Israel now, they still would. Yeah, would they be considered Jews? Of course they wouldn't be. You know, like that's like I said, it's a very, I don't know. I guess it's like it's an ignorant position, but most of the people in the West take on is that, oh, Israel is the place where the Jews are at. Right, even though historically it's not. Even that's why, like in the New Testament, was it John and James? They were like repulsed when Jesus was going to go to Samaria, which is the capital of Israel, right? So there was still this battle between the two, like Judah and Samaria, but that was Israel, as far as they would be concerned, right? But they were not fans of Israel. It's just interesting that people don't read their Bibles; they don't even know this.
No. So, okay. We went off on a tangent.
Sorry.
But it was a nice one. I like it. But so anyways, I woke up to all the different things. And along this journey, that's how I found God, because it didn't matter what I looked up. At the time, YouTube, you could actually find things and they were recommended to you. And you can watch just about anything, and I don't know how your audience feels about the different subjects, but like the Mandela effect or the or quantum effect, if you call it, or the lies of the media and all the other things, they always seem to end with some discussion of good versus evil, God versus Satan. And I remember saying to my wife, I don't understand why we keep ending up here. And everyone was telling me not to read the Bible. And so, of course, you tell me not to do something, I do it. So I went and opened it, with childlike eyes, basically. I had no doctrine that was, honed into me on it because I was told not to read it. So when I read it, it was just me reading it. And I think that's also why, and I'm getting in trouble for the same thing you are, this, post-millennial reign idea. I think that's also why I was able to accept that so much easier than people that have read the Bible for, their entire life or gone to church, and they've been hammered away with that doctrine that they're going to be raptured and that kind of thing. And I can see around that I don't believe if there was a rapture, it's already happened at this point. And we're in this little season or short season, whatever you want to call it. And I find it interesting because it's a subject matter that until recently, nobody wants to talk about. The churches won't talk about it. All they'll talk about is rapture and right up to Revelation, but nobody discusses what happens after that because they're all of the understanding that those are the people that we are. But like you and I and others feel, it's what if we're the left behinds? And so we're trying to figure it out all on our own. And I think those are the reasons that God left some of these clues. Like I do a lot of shows with this gal, Jen and Shapu. They do these shows you've seen them with the melted buildings and all that stuff. And I feel whatever you want to call the different things that we're seeing, these melted buildings, these buildings buried in mud, all that stuff is evidence of all these different, say, resets or revelation itself that happened. And God left it there for us so we could see it and understand it, because we're not supposed to really get signs and wonders. And you might see some things in the sky, but that's pretty much it. We don't have Jesus walking with us, and we don't have, these miracles being performed. We have to go by faith. And that's why I truly believe Paul is an apostle, not just for his day, but for us right now, because his teachings, they align perfectly with what we're dealing with, I feel. So
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you too. I started to think about this. Like, so my question is, and usually this is kind of asked in a conspiratorial way. So if the futurists would believe that the canon is closed, right? The Protestant canon, they believe in the 66 books, even though the Ethiopian Bible has 88 books. That's neither here nor there. I don't think I'm not sure if the Ethiopian Bible, I have to research this, if they've got any books post Revelation that are even claimed to be written afterwards. I'm not sure about that. But isn't it interesting to think the futurist position is these things have not taken place yet? Nothing in the book of Revelation has taken place yet. But so why is the canon closed then? So God's not still sending prophets to reinforce the message of Revelation? Or he is, but they're not worthy to be included into scriptures. I mean, 2,000 years worth of stuff to remind people. I mean, because if things in the Bible are cyclical, well, certainly Jeremiah was repeating things that other previous prophets had been saying. So when he's telling Babylon's coming, he wasn't the first one. Isaiah is talking about it. There's all these prophets that are saying, you guys need to repent because this is coming. Right. So there's there's hundreds of years of this, but now the futurists believe that it's all been written 2,000 years ago, and there's no need of prophets. Now, I actually believe that there is a good reason why the canon would be closed. Let's just say because the things were fulfilled in the first century, and I almost started to think about it. So, back in the days of Abraham, there was no scriptures, right? So Abraham got a promise from God, and he believed it, and he was counted as righteousness because he believed. And I started to think about it. So if all we know is Jesus restored the connection between man and God, and now we can rely on the promises of God and walk in faith and be counted as righteous, we don't need any more. Because we're not under the old law. God gave us a promise. We believe it. And the promise is from Abraham to now is still good. And all we have to do is believe it and walk in faith. And obviously, love each other, do that all that kind of stuff. And I think that maybe if more books is not actually getting anybody to that correct path where it's it's not going to be all spelled out. You're not going to get instructions about how to do everything. But that's the good part, is because it's about faith and it's about belief and it's about just trusting God.
But it's and I know some of it was from watching one of your shows too, because that's the funny thing about people. If you're new to me, I was working with different people, not knowing that JT even existed, and he was doing the same thing, not knowing I was there. And then when we connect, I've been covering about all these different destroyed cities and stuff that God said would happen. And then I went through that list like you did and pulled out all of the cities that are mentioned in Paul's writing, or excuse me, in Revelation, and how they're all going to be destroyed. And they're all destroyed. They're decimated. And so if we're supposed to believe that that's for a future event, what are they going to destroy? There's nothing left. Those churches are long gone. So then they have to add this other conjecture, well, it's a metaphor of the current churches, and this army is the metaphor for Russia, and this, and they just start piecing things together, but there's nowhere it's written. And also the fact that if you're supposed to have one of the signs that they stop, you've talked about this too, they're stopping sacrifices. Well, they did that 2,000 years ago. It hasn't had a sacrifice. And where they're supposed to, quote, build this third temple, which is like when they say we're going to Mars, they've been saying they're going to build this third temple forever, right? And we're breaking ground. Oh, we've got red heifers lined up. Meanwhile, there's a giant cube, a moss cube or whatever that thing's called, where it's supposed to go. So they're not putting it there. So now they're, oh, well, we bought this hill that overlooks where it's going to be, and that works, Just because someone claims that it's now, a religious site and then kills an animal on it doesn't mean that God's behind it. You know what I mean? It's so skewed wrong. And so then even if they do that, then what? They have to start sacrificing so then they can stop again. The narrative doesn't work. It's so, when you start piecing it all together, it's undeniable to me. I mean, don't even get me started with as many times as the apostles pulled Jesus aside privately, hey, Can you tell us?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, yeah, 2,000 years from now, these people are going to be in trouble. You know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't make any sense. He says this generation, he's talking to a room full of people. Well, unless you're thinking that Jesus is like lying, it doesn't make any sense to me anymore.
No, he was specific to them when he said it doesn't, this is for you or it's not for you. Yeah, I mean, like you could imagine if Jesus got asked that when they were asking him specific questions, he'd be like, "Don't worry about it. This is not about you guys."
100%.
Like he would have. I mean, I believe he would have said that, and that's why he didn't say it. I said it's funny. It's kind of funny to think about this. I've mentioned this before on my live streams. Brian, my co-host on Decoding Babylon, sometimes he mentioned that before 1948, would anybody have ever suggested there's going to be a new temple in Jerusalem? I mean, you can probably go back and look, but I'm not sure. Like that's the funny part about it is like this whole third temple concept. That again, there's no prophecies about a third temple.
No.
Revelation, if it's about 2,000 years from later, wouldn't it make sense? And it's after the temple is destroyed. It was written afterwards. It's kind of a big omission that there's not a prophecy about the return of a temple, the return of God's people, all the things that are supposed to happen. That's not in there. And so you could imagine after the first century, 70 AD, all the things that happened, the early church is saying, well, that first century was intense. I wonder what the Great Tribulation is going to be like. You know, when they were lighting Christians on fire and feeding them to lions, that was bad. But the Great Tribulation is going to be super intense, I guess. And then they're thinking, okay, so when are they going to build another temple? Like, can you imagine some of the early Christian fathers saying, well, I wonder when the end times are going to start. I guess they got to build another temple. You know what I mean? You know how silly, you know how crazy that sounds? Like that after Jerusalem is completely laid desolate, just destroyed, burned to the ground. And then somebody's saying, well, I wonder when the end times are going to start. Like, you know what I mean? Like, doesn't that sound?
Well, and then also that means that they prophesied on the new temple. What about the one that was there? That, you know, where's all the prophecies of that other one if that's not the temple you're talking about?
Right.
If you're talking about the future temple. Like, why didn't they all talk about the destruction that happened in those days? Because it hadn't happened for them.
No, but I think this is the thing where like the modern teaching about it is about 1948. It's about all the modern day Israel. And this is why it's crazy, is because if it's anything like, again, if a prophecy in the Bible is cyclical, which I believe it is, I think there's very obvious patterns when you can see it, that the people who were put into captivity, the remnant, they were sad about what happened, and they were sorry, and they went back, and they were supposed to repent. And so they were supposed to go back, rebuild the temple. You know, there was mourning about what happened. And these people were going to go back and be faithful to God again. Well, that did not happen in 1948. So what we're led to believe is that there would not only need to be a prophecy about the return to the land, the rebuilding of a temple. God made that last temple desolate. He doesn't want one now. And obviously the new covenant's about that we are the temple now. The temple, right. You know, so like he doesn't want animal sacrifices again. His son was sacrificed, the perfect sacrifice. The veil was torn. We have a new order. We have through the order of Melchizedek, there's a new way to do things. So how, like in what, it's hard to even put into words. Like, so in what way are they going to try to reinstall the old covenant and not be rebellious when they're doing it? And then an Antichrist is going to come. Like, you know what I mean? Like all these things are so convoluted when you actually understand what God actually did and what that was accomplished in those times. And that to me is like that. It's so crazy. I made a reel from a podcast I did with my buddy postmodern theology. And I was asking him, okay, so why isn't the Jewish Roman War, why is it not documented in the Bible? Why is there not a book about that? And of course, his answer was great. I thought he said, because it hadn't happened yet.
Right.
You know, because it hadn't. I mean, that's actually the most easy way to explain it. It would have been in there if it would have happened probably before they died. I imagine all the apostles were probably dead by the time it was all written, and all that stuff happened.
They went. John even says he's going to be in their tribulations with you.
Yeah.
So unless you had him tucked away in a cave somewhere, where is he? So he
Right.
went through it with them, and we know what happened to all of them. They ended up in sad states. So yeah, and I think that happened, and now the we live in my mind, the little season. And what is Satan going to do? He's first of all, he's going to deceive us through confusion of everything. And we've discussed this before. There's so many things that people can argue whether they're real or not. It's ridiculous. And in addition to that, he's going to use the Bible as a playbook and play out what he saw in Revelation, only his shitty version of it. Like, you get the Ghostbusters new one instead of the old one. That's what you're going to get. And so, yeah, we'll probably see some version of end times tribulations through his eyes. But no, the main one that was talked about, I truly believe that's the destruction we see everywhere.
Yeah, I agree. I guess the interesting part was, so when I asked the question, and so postmodern, he's deep, and he's a learned man. So he was explaining, he was kind of taking us through the Jews teaming up with the Romans to persecute the Christians. And so I posted that reel on Instagram, and I have all these people calling me anti-Semitic, and you're like, so that's the level of ignorance of the modern church, is to say, okay, so do you know what Jesus said about Jerusalem? He said, "Jerusalem, oh Jerusalem, the one who kills and stones God's prophets." He's saying all the righteous blood is going to be on your hands in this generation. And then obviously they killed Jesus himself. They stoned Stephen. They're responsible for stirring up all these people against Paul. And yeah, so these are biblical facts. That's why I said, why do you hate facts? I don't hate anybody. Why do you hate the facts about this stuff? And that's what literally, it's crazy when you think about it, that they were trying to establish some new law about, because people were protesting the war in Gaza about, remember I forgot what the law was going to be called. And it was Mike Johnson, the House, they passed this bill about that it could literally be called hate speech if one of the things you said was that the Jews were responsible for the death of Jesus. And so literally you have people in my comment sections who claim to be Christians accusing me of being anti-Semitic for that's not even what we were talking about. I asked them about the Jewish-Roman War. How much more, I don't know. I guess it's just really sad to see that people, they've really been caught up in this whole politics of division, racism, all this stuff. And it's these are just biblical facts. And I'm not saying that what I am actually saying is that Galatians 3:28, there's no Jew nor Greek, nor slave nor free. We're all one in Christ Jesus. So that's what I'm saying, is that those people have the same opportunity as you and I do to accept Jesus. And apart from him, there's no promises to anyone. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and no man comes to the Father but through him. So there's no separate covenant carved out for them right now. They have the same opportunity to accept him or deny him, which is the spirit of Antichrist. That's not hateful to say. That's the truth.
And because we were just, I had I went to a church that we like nearby here, and they were going over Acts. I was just looking at it, Acts 14, and it talked about Paul. He goes, I think it's called Lystris or Listeria or something like that. And he goes in there and he's preaching, and there's a guy there that hasn't walked his entire life since birth. And he has him stand up, and he walks. And rather than the people in the congregation thinking, wow, we just saw the power of God, they start calling Paul, and I forget the guy that's with him.
Barnabas.
Barnabas, yeah.
Hermes and Zeus.
Yeah, they rename him. Yeah, exactly. And so actually they name him Jupiter and Mercury or something like
that. Well, yeah. So yeah, depending on the nomenclature you use, Zeus and Jupiter are the same. Hermes and Mercury are the same.
Okay, yeah.
So interesting. We'll talk about Hermes actually when we start breaking down the closing ceremony, because I think he's integral.
Well, let me tell you real quick. So they see them perform this miracle, and then they start wanting to pray to them, and they like, no, you're doing it wrong. This is from God, like I'm telling you and stuff. And then it literally says in there, let's see, it says where it says that there was unbelieving Jews who came in and to stir them all up. And eventually they stone him, well, almost to death or near death, and haul him out of the city. And so it's like, you're right. There's so many instances where that term is used, but it doesn't mean like a whole group of certain people. It's these specific people that are still there to this day that are kind of, I mean, you can't say too much. You're on YouTube, but you know what I mean? That's like, that's happening. And you can't even say the words. And I mean, I'm Jewish, so I'm allowed, but it's like a lot of times, like you say, you're anti-Semitic if you say that. People love slapping labels on. When I started talking post-millennial, they called me preterist. I had to look that up. I didn't know what it was. So yeah, it's
well, yeah, it's like yes, a very similar example to that is like when Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. And so what did they want to do? They literally wanted to go kill him because people would start to believe. Like, so that kind of spirit in the synagogues, in the temple, did not change after the resurrection. It just got worse. And I said, isn't it kind of funny to think about, like, the things we're not really taught about? Why did the Romans hate the Christians so much? Right. There has to be a reason. That's never really discussed, because if you think about it, so even in the book of Acts, like, for one, Pilate did not want to kill Jesus, right? His hand was forced, and obviously he took a Weasley way out by saying he washed his hands up, but he didn't want to do it. I think it was pretty clear that he did not want to do it. And then, so then you get into like when Paul, when the Jews stirred up the Romans against him. Remember, they were stirring up people because there was a temple to Artemis in Ephesus. And the idol makers were going to, like, they basically saying, you're going to lose your business if this guy's preaching was true. So they eventually stir a big angry mob up, and that's when he gets arrested. But the point was, it's like that, if you really think about it, the Romans had many gods. I don't think they cared about them worshiping some guy they believed was still dead. Like, why would they care? I mean, could you imagine, like even today with like the stories of our founding fathers, like guys like Benjamin Franklin, who were not really Christians, but this is what we're taught anyways, that he believed that the values of Christianity made good citizens. So why would the Romans go out of their way to persecute people who are feeding the poor, who are willing to get beat, not fight back? Unless for one, there's people stirring the Romans up against them, or literally it's just like the book of Revelation said, and then there's a beast that's given authority to go kill them. Because otherwise, like, you know what I mean? Like, why? Like, there's no real mainstream answer for, like, why would they hate the Christians?
Right.
Wait, because you think about it, obviously it would be a very small sect in a very big empire. Why would they care unless it was straight up biblical?
Correct.
Like, literally the book of Revelation biblical.
Yes. All right. What next? Where should we go?
Well, do you want to go through? I said we go through the presentation of. Okay, so I obviously I teased it. I know I'm a little bit late. Again, I was on vacation, so we can talk about the closing ceremony to the Olympics, because this is kind of how I made my bones making videos, like decoding stuff. And not that this is like needs like a lot of explanation, but I did see some videos about this. Maybe they were trying to be first, so I believe they missed a few things. And so anyways, we'll just go through it, and you guys tell me what you guys think about this. And obviously feel free to chime in. CFM. Let me see. Okay, let's go to okay, first we have, okay, so this guy right here. Let me share my screen. All right. All right, there we go. This guy right here, he's called the Golden Voyager. And he's very bizarre looking, I find, anyways. But what I noticed clearly, like even the way he's posed there, it kind of looks to me like you have it looks almost like a star. You know, you got
Right. I
this
mean, is
golden
the
looking star.
representation of Lucifer, fallen angel, basically? Isn't that what they're
Well,
supposed to
I'm
be?
trying not to go there yet. I mean, because
Oh,
I think
okay.
that a lot
Don't
of
do
people would
that.
say, a lot of people would just instantly say that's the devil.
Yeah.
But like I said, let's just go through it, and then obviously you can make up your own opinions on this.
Sure.
This is how I like to do things. I try not to tell people like because it's point being is you have a being that seems angelic coming from the sky down to earth. So if it's a star, yeah, is this a fallen star?
Well,
Which
can I ask you a question?
yeah, sure,
Because
absolutely.
all right, this is the closing ceremony. If you put it in context with the opening, where they had the pale horse of death coming in, and then they had they had more than one like symbolism too, like Revelation and stuff, or biblical, let's say. And then of course they had that Last Supper, obviously. So
Hmm.
when you add that to this, to me, yeah, you're right. We should go slow, but I mean, it seems obvious at this point.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, I mean, I'm with you. I mean, obviously, that's the funny thing. I think this is a little deeper than the opening ceremony. The opening ceremony was just kind of like in your face, just really grotesque. Now,
Yeah,
this is a little bit more subtle, but yeah, it still has all the same elements. And
yeah,
these people are not that creative. I mean, there's a message that's being put forth, and I think that like these are this is why like people like me and friends of mine, I'm sure somebody like you, once you start to see the patterns, it's like, yeah, okay, so it's a star, it's the devil. Like,
yeah.
yeah, obviously it's the devil. I mean, but again,
You hear Dana
I think
carry with Dana carving your head. Is it Satan? Yeah,
Satan,
it's like,
yeah, it usually is. So I guess the way that I'm trying to present this is in a way that you would they don't perceive that because he didn't come down like wearing a red costume like Sam Smith the other night and have like horns and a tail. So they're trying to picture him, and you think about like the devil, like the song, he's got many names. So what version of that old serpent are we witnessing here? He's kind of the weird thing is he's kind of insect like in this. Now,
yeah.
but here's the interesting thing. So let's go into where he descends down to. And let's see. Like, okay, so I'm pulling this up. Okay, let's see where he descends down to. I should have had this queued up a little better on here, but
It's all right.
it is what it is. What it is.
Anybody
Okay,
that's from my channel that's watching, they see mistakes constantly on my show. Don't worry.
yeah. So what you see here is, I think most people who probably just saw videos of it, they didn't catch this. What you actually see here is the continents, because they're obviously all stylizedly put up. But I mean, obviously
Right.
you have North America here. You have, there's, I guess that's Greenland, and then Europe, Africa, Australia.
Australia. Yeah, we got them all. Yeah.
Now let's see. Let's pull up a different. Okay, so that's another view of it. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Sorry. Let me try to get back here. Oh yeah, what's interesting about this is somebody made the point to show, look, it's a flat Earth map basically.
Right.
It's like you have all the countries around the world with their flags represented, which is interesting how they have those Arctic treaties that we can't go around to. So are they representing the fact that, hello, is that the ice wall around there? I mean, yeah, I guess so. But it's interesting.
Yeah.
So obviously the Golden Voyager descends down onto the plane of the flat Earth, right? Let me see. And what he sees is, again, you had the rider on that pale horse, and I think the other rider on the mechanical horse, they actually give him this flag, and it's the flag of the Greeks. So obviously Greeks, you have the Olympics. What's one thing is funny that I never really made the connection with. Did you ever notice the color scheme of the flag, the Greek flag?
Well, you mean blue, blue and white? You mean?
Yeah, the blue and white. But I mean, like, well, I mean, my shirt's blue and white, but the stripes. What I find interesting is like, do you guys remember that temple on that island that all the celebrities went to visit?
Oh yeah, I could see the connection to
You
similar
know,
colors.
it was interesting. Let's see. I know that guy, that real bad guy. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. What's interesting is that he had a statue out in front of it. And I don't know if I can find a good picture of that. Let's see. Yeah, he had it. He had a. So like, yeah, you see the color scheme there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I can find a picture of it, but he had actually a statue to Poseidon on the island.
Yeah, definitely it's the same color scheme. I see where you're going there.
Yeah, let me see. He had a little idol to Poseidon there. And I don't know if I can find a picture of it. You're just gonna have to trust me on that one. He did. But again, so you have the Greek, the Greek and Roman gods there. You have the Greek color scheme in the temple. I don't know. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Isn't it interesting that wasn't it Tom Hanks when he was getting a little, it was getting a little hot here in the States. He went and he got dual citizenship in Greece.
Oh, did he? I didn't know that about him.
He did. He
I
did.
know
What do you
he's
think?
involved in pretty much everything.
Yes. Yeah. So what is that about? I mean, I think that I'm not saying I've made all the connections, but I'm saying that yeah, maybe there is something there. Let's see. Yeah. So now look at this. Yeah. So the flag. So we have this flag. It's definitely the same colors. I mean, again, take that for what you will.
Sure.
Okay. So we have eventually he takes the flag, plants it into the ground, and then eventually the map lights up and you have this headless winged statue come up from inside the earth. Now I heard somebody say that's Apollyon. Well, what technically that statue is, there's a famous statue in Greece. It's a statue of Nike. Again, the main sponsor of the games. The goddess Nike is the goddess of victory. So it's an established, obviously, that he puts this thing into the ground. The statue elevates. Maybe that's like him declaring victory. This golden Voyager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something he'll never get, but yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, obviously he's got it right now as far as the world's concerned.
Right.
And so
thank God, literally the season is short.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So then they start to elevate the ring. And so I did a little research through the 5 rings. This is what they say. Again, this is what they say. The 5 rings represent the 5 continents. And I'm like, where do they get 5 continents from? Like, we don't consider them being 5 continents. And like, so this is supposedly that the French reintroduced the Olympics back in the late 18th century or like 19th century. I mean, obviously we're taught there's 7. Antarctica is a continent, Australia, Asia, Europe, Africa, North and South America. I guess they're considering America being one continent, which that seems like a bit of a stretch to me, but
yeah,
whatever. So anyways, I did notice that it seems to me like the ring looks more kind of a zodiac-ish like though.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? I think that there's obviously more going on with that. So then it gets elevated, fireworks go off. Obviously the fireworks kind of look like stars to me. And yeah, so the rings go up. But here's where I didn't get much people talking about this, was the fact that after they hoist the ring up, all the people hoist up the Golden Voyager. And what do they form? They form they form a pyramid with him on the top.
Pyramid of bodies.
Yeah, I'm like, that to me is, hello, is that not your Illuminati eyeball?
They'd be on the dollar bill right there is what you're looking at.
yeah, for real. Let me see if I had a better picture of this.
On the back of everyone's George Washington bill right now.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Let's see.
That's the other thing. It's like people that say, oh, you just read everything into it and put the Bible and all this stuff into it. Okay, explain the crap, why my money has these symbols on it. You know, it's like they never go over that. We just accept these things. We've never questioned it.
Yeah, so it's like, so humanity hoists up this golden figure after he claimed victory, launched the games again, which again, the games are actually about honoring Zeus, Jupiter. Interesting. Again, you mentioned that Paul and Barnabas were called Zeus and Hermes. And so that's what I started to look into. So the Golden Voyager. So if you start to think of like a Golden Voyager or Golden, what's that?
Somebody wrote in there that somebody wrote the Tower of Babel. It's also that representation too. Absolutely.
Yes. You also had, we could probably go back into like, what is it? The Commonwealth Games. Did you ever look into that?
I mean, I've looked at them, but I don't know.
Man, I know I got all the pictures saved on that. Yeah, the Commonwealth Games in 2022, I think. Man, that is like, I mean, that was so on the nose as far as just like, I can't even believe how messed up that was, and people don't know what they were looking at. But yeah, that was like, they had the bull imagery. Actually, let me see. I've got some of these pictures up here.
And then what year was that one where they had the nurses and they were injecting the people in the beds and all?
I think that was London in 2022. Let me see this.
Yeah, that was. I mean, I remember when I was like, they had them out here, or when I lived in California in '84. And I even looked at some of those. They had people in the stands holding up flags and, and fireworks and all that stuff. And I think they had like a fake alien ship come down. They didn't have all this like satanic symbolisms, and you know what I mean? It's like, it's really gone off the rails. They just let it all out now at this point. They're not even hiding it, I feel.
Yeah, see, there you go. So that was the 2022 Commonwealth Games. Like, that is really, really on the nose as far as, yeah, they had.
And the golden calf, yeah. I remember these.
See, and like literally there was a light shining between the disco ball star on top of the rebuilt Tower of Babel to this mechanical bull. I mean, it's like, yeah, that's kind of on the nose, don't you think? I mean, that's like, it's pretty unbelievable. Like that was I couldn't even believe it when they kind of show what's going on, because literally it started with the Tower of Babel burning down, and then them rebuilt. They gathered all the nations together, like as a star blew up. The star, people brought their crystals back, and then eventually the tower was rebuilt. The ball goes to the top, and then it beams a light down to the beast.
And someone mentioned, where is it in the chat, Liz? Are they performing rituals? 100%, I believe that, because there is a thing about energy, and if you're doing these things and people are cheering them on, I mean, by definition, they're cheering on these occultic things, whatever they are embedded into them. They don't do these things for nothing. Everything that we get, movies, TV, literature, everything has that hidden, message in the background. That's just the world we live in. 100% these are some type of rituals that people go and watch. I believe.
Now here's what the artist, let's see. Here's what the artist actually claimed that the Golden Voyager represented.
Right. And that's another thing we get hit with. Oh, it's just art. You guys are just taking it way too serious.
Okay, so that right there is the spirit of the Bastille. And of course, people don't understand. So there was a part of like the French Revolution, I believe, had something to do with. I could be wrong about that. I didn't look that closely into it. But anyways, the spirit of the Bastille, and it looks to me like that looks more like Apollo to me. The way he's represented in this picture.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, then you get into like Apollo and Lucifer, very similar beings. They're both sun gods. They're like the light bearer, the light bringer. They're the son of Zeus. Yeah, I think to me that does seem like, okay, so he's holding a torch. He's got a star above his head. He's got, wings and stuff. So typically Apollo is not shown with wings. But yeah, so yeah, what's interesting, again, you go to like the dollar bill imagery. Let's see. Let me see. Great Seal of America. Yeah, look at that. And well, not that one. Come on. We know which one we're looking for. Why is it not showing it on here? Sorry. Sorry, guys. Let's get this. Is that showing the right one? It's still not showing the right one. Sorry.
We're seeing the Great Seal.
Yeah. Well, that is they're, like I said, they're trying to be sneaky. This is the one we're talking about.
There you go. That looks familiar.
Yeah. So now you go back to that image of him ascending up onto it. So that eye represents Horus. And so, like, if you look at the comps from the other religions, yeah, Horus and Apollo are like the same thing. So then you have the all-seeing eye represented like a sunburst and all that stuff. Yeah, there's nothing new under the sun. When I see a pyramid with a golden object gleaming above it, it's like, yeah, that's what they want you to see because that's what they're trying to show you. And I think to me, it's like, maybe it's more subtle than the Commonwealth Games, but it's really not very subtle at all. And
no, I agree with you. It's just, I feel though, once our eyes are open, it's like it hits us in the face. Because, if you go back, at least for me, go back, say 10 years, and I didn't believe in any of the things I talk about. I was still on the other side and excited about, space exploration and all that, and believed in the news and things. And then, and here we are. And all of a sudden now it all looks ridiculous to me. I've described it as like when you were a kid on the playground and they had those whatever you call those merry-go-round kind of things, and if you were on it, there was always that one kid that just spun it like crazy, and so you either had to hang on and get sick or you had to jump off and not die. But if you weren't on it, you could just point at it and go, wow, that looks crazy, but you weren't involved in it, and I kind of feel that way now. It's like I see all these things, I see all the symbolisms and stuff behind it, but the majority of the people don't. They get excitement for the games, and somehow, for whatever reason, God woke us up so we can see this and then, expose it as best we can.
Yeah, no, I mean, I did a couple of shows talking about the Olympics, and I said the crazy part about it is that I guess we were naive at some point, and we didn't realize the Olympics were anything more than just a worldwide sporting event, just international sports. But that's the thing about it is, and I guess, and that's why, like, obviously God's revealed things to us that, yeah, no, this world is not what you think it is. It's not what they say it is. Mm-hmm. That when the Frenchmen, again, it's interesting how the French actually introduced the Olympics, and then they had to put it in Greece. So again, this is the 33rd Olympics, believe it or not, or the 33rd since they started it up again. And so it's back in France, and the guy, I guess it was something Pierre something. Of course, his name was Pierre something. He was a French guy, but he literally said that this was not about sports only; it was about religion. So he literally says this. I had the article pulled up, and of course, I'm not going to search for it right now. Trust me on this one. That's why he brought it back. And the ancient Greeks, the Olympics was not just about sports either. It was about honoring Zeus, and it has something to do with Hercules and all the things, Mount Olympus, Olympians. That was the abode of the gods. So was it 393 AD, Theodosius I established the Theodosian laws, and he banned all paganism. That included the Olympics. So if they banned this back in the Byzantine Empire because it was pagan, it's because it was pagan. Not because we're reaching, it's because it was. And so that's the interesting part about it, is that as after like the Enlightenment and all this stuff, and the world's getting more secular, why were they bringing back paganism? unless all the things we're saying are true, because they could have had sports that had a separation of sports and religion, and the world would have been celebrating that, right? You know, like all the NPCs would have been clapping like seals. Yeah, I don't think religion belongs in sporting events anyways. I didn't like it when Tim Tebow prayed. Okay, so why are we doing the Olympics still? Why are we honoring Dionysus and all that kind of weird stuff? The god of wine and chaos and all this stuff. Because the world still clings to this satanic religion. If not, why?
And you're allowed to mock Christianity and the Last Supper and all that. And in fact, first of all, the woke people are like, oh, it was nothing to do with the Last Supper and all that. Meanwhile, the Olympic Committee had said, hey, we're sorry for mocking the Last Supper. But, you know, that's okay. Where was there mocking Muhammad or Buddha? Or, you know, you never see that. Not that I wish that. I'm just saying it's open season on Christianity and Jesus and the Bible, and that's it. You know, you can make fun of them every day of the week. You can talk about the Jews a little bit, but other than that, nobody else, right?
Right. Well, I mean, no,
just a little.
If we're in Satan's short season and he's the god of this world, you could honor him with stuff like this, right, with him being elevated up by humanity on a pyramid. Isn't it interesting? I always think like the kind of like the difference between Jesus being the cornerstone, you know, like he's the foundation. Paul talks about like the foundation is Christ. And so we're trying to build our houses on the rock, which is Jesus. And then the opposite is the people elevating their God, you know, the false God, where it takes all of humanity to hoist him up to go amongst the stars of God. I think that's interesting. It's like, it makes perfect sense in the way that the things you'd imagine they would be. And so, so Jesus gets mercilessly mocked by all the people who have all the things in this world. And that's exactly how it would be. You know, Jesus said, no, if they hate you, knowing they hated me first. And they prove it over and over again. And obviously, so Jesus said there'd be haters. He's right every time. Like every time you wear this shirt, people get mad, and if either love it or they hate it. So like they can prove it. They can prove it right, even if they do hate it.
Yeah, I hear you. I get the same. It just like I'll do a live stream every Friday night, 6 p.m. West Coast time, and I'll do a live stream and I'll watch the numbers. And as soon as I start bringing up the Bible or Jesus in it, I'll lose like 20, 30 people. And then they'll wait around, and then when I'm done, I'm talking about other things. They're back, you know, and it's sad to me because those are the people that really need to listen, and they're watching Truth or whatever you want to call these channels, and yet they'll look at everything except this one book because someone else told them it's a religious trap. But you know, you're still using faith. If you're believing in science, you're having faith in those scientists because they can't prove most everything. They're all still theories of evolution and theories of what do you call it? I can't think of all the different theories, but you know, like Einstein's and all that stuff. And some have been disproven and rewritten and all that. And when you're dealing with people that don't believe in the Bible or said, oh, King James had a finger on it and all this stuff, they're putting their faith and trust in other men that have written books or done podcasts or something else. And so where do you want to put your faith in? Well, for me, I found that the Bible's proven so many things. You can prove things out of the book. And it was written by how many different people across how many different continents, across how many years, and still it's put together. Books have been taken out. It's been manipulated, Mandela effect, whatever. The message is still there. The histories are still there. And to ignore something that important, it's mind-boggling to me that they just shy away from it because it's like a trigger to them in some way. You say a word, you say Jesus, or you wear it on your shirt, and that's it. They don't want to hear anything from you, and it's almost like there's some kind of, you know, as God says, something over their eyes. It's not allowing them to see or hear it.
That's 100%. That's usually when I get people who, you know, the God haters or the atheists in the chat and stuff like that. I think that's the best way to respond to this kind of people is ask them questions. Okay, so what do you believe? You know, it's like it's easy to poke holes in people's faith. right? Because it's like, I'm not saying that there's absolute facts and proof of everything I believe. There's some things we have to take on faith.
Right.
So, okay. So then you obviously try to expose that they are doing the same thing and they just are not willing to admit it. And then we all get to the place of like, you have to decide what you believe. And some of us obviously are more comfortable believing this. And some people are trying to look for any other alternative that leaves them with no accountability. And I said that to me, that's like the most heartbreaking thing you can see is like that the lie that we came from animals, because, and the reason that people want to accept that is because they want to have no accountability like animals.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that's really, I mean, that's really sad. But I think that's the only answer that really makes any sense is even like the guys like Richard Dawkins, famous atheist who doesn't believe in a creator, but then he finally started to say he believes that it's possible, that whole panspermia theory, which is literally that these aliens spread out their seed all over the universe. And that's basically how we were created. Almost like, again, it's like, it's similar to like the Anunnaki stuff. Okay. So as long as you just call them aliens, there's fine. He's okay with intelligent design and creator. Right. So you just don't believe in that one. The one from the Bible is the one you don't believe in. Okay. Well, obviously you don't believe in that one, but now you're a hypocrite. Right. Now you have no respect because it's like we understand what you're saying. And that's you go back to Psalm 14:1. The fool says in their heart, there's no God, because his deeds are wicked, because he's corrupt. It's not because he doesn't believe. It's because he doesn't want to believe. And that's when you can see that all over and again. It's like people decide what they want to believe by what's comfortable to them. Whatever they can believe and not change, just still live the way they want to.
I feel I've said this, and maybe people think this is silly, but I don't believe there are any actual atheists. I think people choose, like you said, to not accept God. But when it comes down to it, where they say no atheists in foxholes, like
Right.
if people get into their worst situation, they cry out for God. And that's sometimes why God has to shake things up, because they forget and they go off onto these other side gods and stuff and end up, in sin and death. And so everyone eventually, I think there's a breaking point where they would accept that. Hopefully they do it sooner than later. But it's like, just because you don't believe in the Bible or the God of the Bible, or say even where we live with a firmament enclosed on us, doesn't mean you don't live there. The goldfish can pretend he's not in the bowl, but he's in it. He can think he's not, but he's in it. And so it doesn't matter whether you listen or believe the things we're saying. We're just telling you, look, we woke up and realized this is where we are. You can't change that. You can't live in somewhere else. We live here. And if you're living in the same place we are, we just realize where we live. This is the way I look at it.
And there you go. So you shared this to me, sent me an email of this, where again, like, as we were talking about, if you want to say I'm reaching, bro, with the eye on top of the pyramid. Okay, now look at this compilation. And this does not show you half of what there is out there of the one-eyed symbolism with the metals and all this stuff. Caliph. Actually, you know what? I queued that up and I'll share my short little video. This might be, you guys might consider this self-indulgent, but whatever. Wait, let's see where I got this thing queued up. Okay, let me.
What's going on, guys? Do you see Israel's rhythmic gymnastics team took the silver medal? Yeah, I know you guys don't care about that, but you'll care about this. Take a look at their outfits. Real subtle one-eyed symbolism. Yeah, how about that? They always have to tell us, don't they? Speaking of they always have to tell us, do you see Caliph with her gold medal? Look at this pose. Covering up one eye. Yeah, guys. What do you think? Let me know in the comments.
It's just a coincidence. Thousands of coincidences.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, again, in the world that we believe we've been shown and we see all the time, Why are they doing that? And of course, again, they don't see the devil as we do and what the Bible says. That's why they'll say, well, this is symbolizing either like your third eye being opened up. This is it. This is enlightenment. But again, think going back to the serpent in the garden. What did he give them? He told them to eat of the tree of knowledge, and then they would be as gods.
Right.
Again, so you have this eye that represents light and knowledge. You have illumination, Apollo, Horus. You know that. Again, that's what they're showing you with the one-eyed symbolism. And it's crazy. I remember, I forgot what the guy's name was. He used to have he had a pretty big YouTube channel on this. And he used to show this stuff all the time. And every now and then I would see, like I was even like when I first got on TikTok, I was making compilation videos of everybody doing the one-eye symbolism. And at one point you almost like your cognitive dissonance wants to kick in saying, maybe I'm wrong because it's making me completely sick to my stomach to see everyone
yes.
do it. Because now you're thinking like, maybe it can't really mean that but yeah, that's what it means. Like, that's what it means. These are the enlightened
I was doing
ones.
the same thing and I couldn't get over it. Like, oh, this person too. You'd find pages and pages and pages of it. It's not a coincidence. Magazine covers, they're all doing it. Like, come on.
It does not end. I remember, and then so I always try to tell people, if you found one picture of somebody doing something, I get it. Like, like, okay, well, he's touching this or he did this. I'm like, okay, that might be a reach. But then when you actually see like the other poses, like usually when they do that's the easiest way to see it. It's like some magazine photo shoot and they're doing this, they're doing this, they're doing every pose that you can think of in like
don't forget that one too.
They're doing the devil horns, they're doing all the stuff. And yeah, I do think that that's like part of us waking up is like to see that it's like, yeah, it's all these people. And that's why, like I said, a lot of people are acting like I'm shilling for Trump, and I would say that I've never shilled for Trump, but I would say that I always said that if he made it in New York City, he made it in Hollywood with The Apprentice and all that stuff like that. You don't get in that club without playing games in that club. So now, so the question is like, what kind of role is he playing now? And I continue to ask that question.
Well, here's the thing, JT. When I told you my truth awakening, I was on board Team Trump. But now looking back in hindsight, I mean, he put in the red flag laws that made all this illegal. He put in the you can't talk about Israel in a negative way. He was start a space force, which we know is all garbage, so more money wasted. And don't forget, he was Warp Speed. He was that guy. He was holding up products that we were supposed to like start taking soon. First time I've ever seen a president hold up a product placement. And then he spent more money than the last three before him. So when I woke up to all that and realized it doesn't matter what puppets in the office, they all work together. You can find tons of him that triangle when they do, right? That's another one that we didn't talk about.
Did you ever see that? Have you ever looked up all the Space Force logos?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you can bring those out. They're great. Some kind of like Luciferian thing in his tower and stuff. You can find those pictures and stuff. I mean, I'm not calling him out more than the others. He's just one of them. I think between the choices we have this year, he says the things that you want to hear, but then he also says weird things like you just said earlier, or how about he says, I'm going to keep men from being in women's sports. How are you going to do that? You know what I mean? It's like what legislation works across all the countries of the Olympics. I said to my wife, I think next week he's going to say free cookies on Saturday. It's like he's just saying whatever people want to hear.
It was, it was the old Pedro when he was saying that if you elect me, all your wildest dreams will come true.
Yeah, that's it. And he told the Christians, if you vote me in, you won't have to vote ever again. What's that supposed to mean? Does that mean he's made everything perfect? Or does that mean they're coming for the Christians again and we won't have to worry about it because you can't vote without a head? I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, that's a weird thing to say. It
was very odd. So and trust me, between the two, I find him hilarious. And I think, hopefully it would be a slower boil with him in the pot, being the frog is who we are. Whereas if we throw in Kamala is her name, right? And I think we'll go to crazy town even faster. But at some point, I want to rip the Band-Aid off of this and get this going. You know what I mean? It's exhausting, isn't it?
Yeah, let me see. So if you guys had not seen like the Space Force logos, because it's funny, the Space Force does not get talked about very much, but man, the budget is massive now. And yeah, this was a Trump baby.
And I'm asking you, what in the hell do they do? Like, what do
that's
they do?
what that I remember
Where are they
asking that
trained?
question. I was saying like who has a clue what they do? Here, let's see it.
Guys, we've got to talk about these Space Force logos. Are you kidding me? Here's number 13, lucky number 13. You know, Revelation 13 talks about a beast rising from the sea. So we got Moloch coming out of the hole in the earth, probably the sea. Let's keep looking. We got the bear from Daniel 7. Obviously, he's got a key. Bottomless pit, probably. We got number 5, fifth seal. I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Yeah, I guess the bear's got the key, though. Let's keep going. Ooh, number 4, Illuminati eyeball. We got 2 lightning bolts. This is not Unit 666, believe it or not. Let's actually look at Unit 6 right now. Yeah, a 6-headed dragon. Making a 6 with 6s all over the place. And a hexagon.
These are not made up, guys. This is real.
Yes. Magic number 11. Pentagram with crosshairs. Is that a building? You know, interesting thing about Roman numeral 11, if you flip it upside down, it's a 9. Let's look at that. Whoa, looks quite a bit different from this angle, doesn't it? So here's a 9 over here. We got an upside down pentagram now. And that kind of doesn't look like a building anymore. It kind of looks like a pit. Is that a bottomless pit? Because you see the concave over here? Huh. Is that something coming out of a bottomless pit? Revelation 9:11?
9/11.
Yeah, I mean, so like that, people would say that when I made that first video, they were like, "Those aren't real." Yeah, they're real. There's more of them too. There's a lot. There's even worse ones. Like, and I went down a rabbit hole one time, just going like looking at all like the patches on like the military uniforms, the different kind of forces and like the Army and the Navy and the Air Force.
Oh yeah,
unbelievable. Yeah, and you asked a great question. What are they doing? Nobody has a clue what they're doing.
No.
And how could we? That's what I say. I knew when you were saying something about the satellites. I remember seeing that. I can't remember what the contract was, but it was NASA or somebody was going to clean up space debris. Obviously, the contract is massive. Like, how would anyone know if they cleaned anything up?
Exactly. Well, I've covered that too. When you look at the actual amount of satellites that are flying through there and they never hit each other, they never have any collision with anything flying in space. The ISS has been up there forever. What's her name? Sandra Bullock went up there for just a short time and the whole thing blew up, you know. But our ISS is fine, right? They're eventually going to blow it up and whatever. That's what Space Force is doing. But then, no, it turns out Elon Musk is coming to save the day, you know. You know, there's 2 astronauts trapped in the ISS right now.
I've seen.
Screens are failing.
I've resisted the desire for me to make a video about that. Just saying, come on, guys. Yeah. Like it is kind of funny if you think about it. Like if that is the news that they claim it is, that should be a big deal, right? Like, right. Is there any danger they're going to run out of air or something? Like, so what is the story here? But it's kind of almost like, oh yeah, they're still up there. They're still floating in that space station. They're still doing all the goofy gadgets, like, you know, like playing with like different little things and deck of cards, a hammer, you know, they're floating. You know, it's funny.
They're not running out of food. They're not running out of air, water, and nothing. They're fine.
You know, what's funny is like, have you ever seen Top Gun 2?
Yeah.
It's pretty terrible. I thought it was not a good movie, but
horrible.
But what's interesting is the Tom Cruise character Maverick. He's trying to break the speed record, and I think he goes like, I don't know, it was like Mach 3. I can't remember. It was like Mach 3 or something like that. And then he's going to go about like 9,000, 10,000 miles an hour. And so of course you see what he has to wear to go that fast, right? Like he puts on this outfit, and it's like it's a big deal to go that fast. Meanwhile, the International Space Station's going like 2 Machs faster than that, and they're wearing polo shirts, and they're just going like it's like this big goofy thing. It's like, shouldn't this be? It seems like that would be really dangerous. And if you think about it, like I want to see this one time. Of course, you'll never see this.
You'll never see it, but yeah.
Can you imagine somebody again? So if Maverick is putting on all this gear and he's getting in this super high tech jet, whatever, he has to wear all this stuff or he'll die. And then, can you imagine them trying to catch the International Space Station, dock somehow, and then safely get off the craft onto the International Space Station? At 17, I want to say they say it goes 17,500 miles an hour.
I can look it up.
That seems pretty intense. Meanwhile, like I said, they wear polo shirts. So we don't perceive that those astronauts.
Right 17,500 miles an hour.
Yeah. So
8 kilometers a second.
So we don't perceive them being in any danger. And the news does not really give us the idea that they're really in danger. When you think that like this would be very dangerous, like very dangerous. You can this. I mean, how fast does a bullet go?
I'd have to look that one up too.
I mean, you've looked at. You're looking that up.
I'll look it up. Yeah. I know Superman's faster, but the speed of the bullet is 2,730. It says that's for a Remington rifle.
Oh, wait, it's 2,700 miles.
30 miles an hour for a Remington rifle.
So the International Space Station is like, I don't know, 4 times that fast. Is that my math right on that? Or like, no, it's like
we were doing math.
It's like 4 or 5 times faster than that. Faster than a bullet. And meanwhile, they can land on that thing, get on, get off. Come on. Again, like, so to back to what you're saying, like, you have to put your faith in something. You're going to put it in that?
Right.
Really?
And the wild thing is like when you would talk to a room full of people and you say, has the government ever lied to you? And every hand will go up, everyone. I mean, they admit it. There's different wars and things that you can see now that they admitted they lied about, okay? So we know they've lied. The same thing with NASA. If you can prove one thing was a lie, which you can, how do you trust any of the rest of it, you know? Like the people here, I'm sure know, but, the moon landing where we've destroyed the technology of the most amazing accomplishment in mankind. Yeah, let's destroy that. And let's lose or destroy all the tapes of it. And none of it makes any sense. And Nixon makes a phone call in 1969, and I lose reception on my porch talking to my mother. I mean, come on. What size battery would they need to take up there to get that, reception? And there's too many questions. You can go all day and realize that there's no way. And then the thing that woke me up to that, do you have it? Can you bring that up? Bring up high definition of lunar lander. And it's insane. I mean, you've seen it probably, but every time I love looking at it. I mean, it literally looks like a lawn chair and tin foil, and you can see gaps in it, and there's tape that's missing, and it really looks like something that was done in a 6th grade project. They used to have those craft fairs or whatever.
Yeah, I had a video that went pretty viral on TikTok where I was going through all the moonland stuff, and that's what I said. I said that's basically how I started off. Though I was saying that, do you believe that? I said, do you really believe we went to the moon 50 plus years ago? And I said, here's what a phone looked like 50 plus years ago, and here's Richard Nixon using one of those phones to call the moon. And you think about like that. I know that some of the images are recreations, which is interesting. That talk about propaganda.
Can you make any of these bigger, like the one underneath that picture?
Let me see. Yeah, like talk about the propaganda.
The one next to it.
Let me see.
That one. Yeah, bring that up. Yeah, make that larger. That thing's ridiculous. It's just like paper mache and tape and.
Well, right. Like we're supposed to believe that space is supposed to be some kind of, oh man, that's Houston Chronicle and they want me to pay. It's not going to happen. Can you see that one? I don't know. It's kind of a pain.
Yeah.
Maybe this is just the browser I've got. But yeah, there's images. Where I can find one that actually shows that there's gaps in the panels of
Right.
this thing.
And then somebody's made a comment. Yeah, the Indian one was an honest to God cartoon. That one was hilarious.
I guess that's what they're saying though. The funny thing about that is that what they'll actually say is that was a recreation, but you're like, but don't you guys kind of see like what's going on here? That when you say that, you have to understand that the news is getting those images, and what it's actually showing you is that that's propaganda you're watching then. Because like what we're taught is like during the 60s that they sent images for the news, or the news created it for NASA in order to have something for the people to look at. Right. And so even like there's that famous interview with Buzz Aldrin and Conan O'Brien when he's like, I remember when we saw, and he's like, no, you didn't see that. You saw animation. Right. And he's like, no, but I saw. He's like, no, you heard. You heard us talking, but you were watching. No, there was nobody. He's like, nobody was there taking the video. So the news was showing images when there really wasn't images. And then people are confused. But yeah, if you could see this a little better, it's like, it's harder to see. But yeah, like when you go up into like this, like the white part of this, you can actually see like gaps in these panels. And obviously it's all made of like foil and stuff. And it's like, it's so stupid when we're taught that. What's interesting is the moon, supposedly the surface of the moon is 250 degrees, I believe, in the daytime or something like that. So it's really hot. You know, so the fluctuation between it being really cold and really hot in space is obviously it's super dramatic. When you think about like technical equipment, like glass, plastics, different kinds of things that would either get smaller, you know, they would contract and expand and contract. How is the glass going to hold up to that? And these astronauts actually say that there was parts of it that were so thin they could put their foot through it. That's what they say.
Yeah.
So explain to me how they could fly back in that piece of crap. And
then of course, if you look at it, there's no dust in the footholds of that. Like where's the blast crater? Because that thing should have come down and should be blasting down so that way they don't crash into the moon. Where's that? It's perfect underneath there.
Right. And they were, you know, what was the other thing they were saying? It's like, I forgot somebody who knew something. They were talking about the amount of power the engine would have had to have to do what they were doing, or at least what they claim it had. And so they're talking to Houston when they're sitting on top of this massive engine. Where's the sound?
Exactly. Right.
I think that's what they were saying. Like, so that's another reason to talk about. It would make a crater and it would be super loud being right there, but there wasn't any sound.
And then I find interesting is we were discussing these things as, you know, whatever you want to call it, the fake space, flat earth, whatever started taking hold. We were discussing, well, that ridiculous shot when it leaves moon's atmosphere and, you know, the little sparkles go off and it shoots up into the air, you know, the top of it.
Yeah.
And the camera pans up as it goes away. So we all started making the comment. So do they leave someone on the moon? Who's doing the camera pan?
Right, exactly.
Right. So then they came out, like they rewrite history, like, oh, they were using a joystick controller and oh, that's new, you know, so that's how they got the pan up shot supposedly. But then the question is, when they're coming down on the moon and he's putting his foot on the ground saying it's, you know, one step for man, that thing, who filmed that? Did they set the camera down first, then run back upstairs and then walk down? Like, is it like an arm stretched out on the lunar lander somehow? They don't describe who filmed Neil Armstrong stepping on the moon.
This is funny. So this picture right here, if you guys can see, let's say we can zoom in a little bit on here. That's my brother. It was funny. I was going through some old photo albums. My dad passed away earlier this year, and I made a photo montage, and I found this old picture of my brother, and in his face, he's got this flat smile, and I said, And of course, I posted on Facebook and I said, somebody just told him that was the spaceship. And that's his reaction. Because it is funny because you think about like, so, you know, my brother was actually, believe it or not, he was born in 1969. So he was born the year they went to the moon first.
Right.
And then you grow up through the generation that watches all the Star Wars movies. You have all the like the idea of what we would perceive as a spaceship. And then you go see one and you're like, hey, this is what an actual spaceship looks like. What?
Yeah.
And that's the reaction you would get. You'd be like, where's the Millennium Falcon?
I like it. How about that? What if they had this kind of crap in Star Wars instead of the Millennium Falcon? Everyone would be laughing at them, right?
Nobody would buy it. Nobody would believe that would work.
That Millennium Falcon's got tinfoil on it. This is ridiculous. I see tape marks on it. I mean, yeah. That's
like the Luke Skywalker classic when we first sees it. What a piece of junk.
Right.
You know, so he sees the Millennium Falcon, he says that, and it's like, can you imagine if he saw that? Don't worry, we're going to go 238,000 miles in this thing back to Earth?
Yeah. And we're going to go through the Van Allen belt, which somehow we did and we can't do again. Like, how the heck did we go through it so many times? How many moon landings did we have now in this reality? There's multiple moon landings. Never had a problem. Nobody died of cancer. And yet you take your roll of film in those days and you couldn't go to the airport and the radiation would destroy it. But yet this is fine. Whenever they had the little tinfoil outside, everything's cool. But we can't figure it out now in 2024. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, the reason now is because people didn't know about the Van Allen radiation belt back in those days. So they didn't realize how
still alive. They didn't come down with leukemia.
They didn't realize how hard it was to go through that, or the people didn't realize there was something had to go through because they just went to the moon. And again, it's funny. It is funny to think about like it is funny just to think about like the technology, because I remember when you used to have like foreign correspondents, like by the news, like CNN and all like the major news networks, and they would be in Iraq or they would be in Bosnia, and they would have their little hands on the thing, and there'd be this delay when they're talking to people in New York, right? Mm-hmm.
But not to the moon.
But yeah, literally, you have a live stream of the moon in 1969. And again, I'm confused. I thought like they needed like real film. You know, isn't it interesting when they show you pictures now of space, stars and stuff? Or they're like, oh, well, those are infrared pictures, and they have to look like that because we don't take regular pictures. Well, they took real video from the moon.
Correct.
Okay, so why didn't they just
rode that little car around? We saw it. Yeah.
They drove the car, and the car fits where in that spaceship?
Exactly. It doesn't.
Where does that big old dune buggy fit in that? I mean, yeah, there's so much about that. It is funny that like that was originally when my journey to biblical cosmology, flat earth, whatever you want to say it, I was resistant, but I had made videos about clowning on the moon landing. And then when I found out, I was like, well, one of the reasons I believe that the earth was still a ball is like, because there's pictures of it. And then I realized, supposedly the very first picture of the blue marble, they took the picture on the way to the moon. And I was like, well, dang. Okay, so now I can't actually use that as proof of it.
Photoshopped, you can see the cutouts and all that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So if you guys have not seen that documentary, it's called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon.
That's great.
And they talk about that, and they literally the Apollo 11 astronauts faked a picture of the Earth. They literally went back to the back of the cabin and they showed a picture of. Well, they basically they had like a cardboard cutout.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they cut out all the lights in the thing, and they made it just look like. So the real question is like, how far away from the Earth were they? I mean, obviously they had to be in some kind of a pretty high altitude to do what they did.
As they say, it was like low Earth orbit because they didn't get through the Van Allen radiation belt. So they stayed in low Earth orbit, and then they faked that photo. But because at the time that's being taken, they say that they're almost at the moon. And so it doesn't match up. And then if you need any more proof, look at the astronauts on the way to going to the moon. They look giddy as ever, like they just won the lottery.
Right.
And then look at the what do you call it? The conference.
It's a straight up hostage video.
It's a hostage video, exactly. And it's like they're so sad and depressed because they know at this point, first of all, they were lied to on some degree, I would assume, until they got in there like, yeah, you're not going. And now they have to lie the rest of their lives and be agents against humanity, basically. And then they ended up like, a lot of them got drunk and didn't do interviews. And that's got to be taxing on you to just have to lie the rest of your life. Look at Buzz Aldrin and how wacko doodle he got, lately, or is he still alive? I don't know if he died, but
well, I think this blew me away when I learned this. Did you know that they said Neil Armstrong, the only interview he gave post moon landing was that conference?
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying that was the only interview he ever did, but he never talked about. He was never interviewed about the moon landing after that.
No.
Now, how wild is that?
That's what he's known for.
Right. You would think obviously that was your career. You would be like, you would just go around and be Neil Armstrong wherever you wanted to be. And you would, that's what you would do, right?
I would ask you, let's say you're one of the 3 people that actually set foot on a place that isn't Earth. You were able to set your foot somewhere else, non-Earth. You wouldn't be coming home going, heck yeah, pour me a beer, boys. Let me tell you about this. No, they sat there, like you said, it's a hostage negotiation, and they were just like so quiet and depressed, and it's so telling.
Yeah, here's a video, and this is a little bit of a longer video, but this is actually, I did a stream with my buddy Max Powers, and he showed, he's the one who first brought this up about this, and this will show you a clip of that thing. Hopefully this doesn't get me demonetized. I don't think so. Let me see.
Detail on one of the Apollo missions that was proven beyond a shadow of a doubt to have been completely faked and lied about, and that was that mission's shot of the Earth when they were a certain distance away. They were caught faking it, just red-handed caught faking it.
Here they discuss the fact that they have turned out the lights and have blocked out sunlight from entering the spacecraft through the other windows, as to not cause any reflected light to fall onto the spacecraft's wall in the foreground.
Okay, very good. Well, we shut out the sun coming in some of the other windows into the spacecraft, so it's looking through the number 1 window, and there isn't any reflected light.
The reason this was done is so that the truth of the matter would not be revealed. It is this. Though the federal government will have you believe that this is a view of Earth from a distance out of the spacecraft's window as it nears the moon, it is not. What they have ingeniously done is placed the camera at the back of the spacecraft and centered the lens on a circular window in the foreground, outside of which it is completely filled with the Earth in low orbit. The circumference of the window then appears to be the diameter of the Earth at a distance, with the darkened walls of the spacecraft appearing to be the blackness of space around it. That is why they wanted the interior dark and blocked out the sun from entering through the other windows. Here you can see the extruded window, probably 2 inches thick at the bottom. This is because the Earth's shine is coming in at a downward angle. It also causes the Earth to appear to be an irregularly shaped circle, for you are seeing the outside of the window at the bottom and the inside of the window at the top, which together form 2 different sized halves of a circle. Subsequently, this take was never used. As they perfected the shot, a crescent-shaped piece of black material was inset slightly into the window to create the illusion of the Earth's terminator line dividing night and day.
Can I ask you something, JT? Why is this hardly anyone seeing
During
this?
the segment intended to be edited and played back later for the worldwide television audience,
Let me see. He's about to pull,
dated July 18th,
they're about to pull the
1969,
thing off this.
Neil
thing.
Armstrong condemns himself as he states that he is 130,000 miles out, or halfway to the moon, as the NASA flight log also states on this date, when he is in reality in low Earth orbit of a few hundred miles.
Roger, Houston, Apollo 11. Calling in from about 130,000 miles out.
Here is the diffused work light that they used
Okay,
to
so
see
here you
camera
go.
controls,
This will show you.
but not throw light onto the spacecraft's wall. Here they remove part of the crescent insert.
Yeah, the real damning one is when they turn on the lights and they forget.
Yeah.
Finally, the iris is opened up and you can see the real location of the camera and the very bright and near Earth out the window.
Oops.
Yep. There's the
Obviously, nobody has a clue how much of the Earth they were showing.
Yeah.
But obviously, when you watch that, you realize they were only showing just a very small portion of it to make it look like it was round. So you're like, so the question would.
Yeah. So that. Yeah. So you get the idea though that's. Yeah. So they literally just made they made a Earth-size hole, and they even like made it look like a crescent, like the Terminator line, where you could see part of the Earth was nighttime and part of it was daytime. And then, yeah, when they removed it, they just turned the cabin lights on. It's like, yeah, so the Earth was taking up the whole window,
Right.
but they were only showing that much of it.
And so, and like she says in that, they're in low Earth orbit. So when he says they're 130,000 miles away, we can prove that was a lie. So once again, if someone lies to you like that, then you have to question everything else, and then the whole narrative falls apart.
Right. So I was saying, so what most people probably did not believe, and like including myself, when I first started going down the NASA rabbit hole, was I never would have thought they were faking the shape of the Earth. But then if you really think about it, like it was not a ball. It was not a circle. They did because they didn't get far enough away to see the edges. I mean, so they were either trying, I mean, so obviously you have two things. They faked the shape, and also they faked how far away they were.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's crazy. But and so when people say, well, how come there's no stars in the background? Now you know why there's no stars. What are they going to do? They're going to have to they couldn't poke maybe they could poke little holes in their little piece of paper so you can see little bits of light shining through. But that's why there's no stars. And what's crazy is if you looked closely at that image that they showed when they had it fixed, like the one they used,
yeah.
That is the image you see of the Earth from the moon.
Correct.
They show that exact same image. So now you know that's fake. Like they got caught faking that. And but nobody knows about that.
But also the next big one they had, the blue marble one in the, what was it, 70s or whatever, they have that guy that actually did the artist rendition and said, yeah, it's Photoshop, but it has to be. He says it, and you can find clouds that are like multiple times on the same globe. I mean, they're, like you say, we don't have a single fly spacecraft, turn it around and take a photo of the Earth. They won't do it because they can't.
Well, right. So you can get these very precise images of Jupiter, right? Of Jupiter through all these crazy space telescopes, but they cannot do one of Earth without it being photoshopped. Why?
Yeah.
And that's why, like I said, when you actually look at the images, and this blew me away too, was I believe this is what NASA claims, and you guys can look this up. I'm not going to do it right now. Is that the last image of Earth they had, the whole thing from a spaceship or something, was from like 1972, and they didn't take another one until like 2015.
Right.
And so if you look it up, they'll actually say that what they do to get a composite image of the whole ball Earth, the whole blue marble, is they take low-level satellites and like literally they patch them together in order to make an image. And that's literally what they say.
Right. And when you look at the different countries, it's on. I do an outro where I play music and have memes. There's a shot that has, depending on what nation you are, what country, the Earth looks different between us and Japan and Russia. The Earth's never the same. And even within our own US photos, or whatever you want to call them, images, the continents change sizes and stuff. Like none of it adds up. Because it depends on who drew it that day. They admit that they get and they draw it and they have animators. I mean, when World War II ended, the Nazis didn't go away. They went into Disney and NASA. I mean, it's like, they tell you.
Yeah, where's this? I saved one other. Oh, by the way, guys, if you've not gone to join my not Telegram, I got on Telegram, but yeah, we had a Discord group, and of course, I created a bunch of different little offshoots of that, and one of them is biblical cosmology and all that stuff, and of course, so that's what there'll be a lot of memes and that kind of stuff. Where's this image I found? Did it get deleted? So that's the thing. That's why you have to save all this stuff, is because yes, it will be deleted at some point. Oh yeah, here you go. Let me see. I'll share this one. And this is a great example of. Okay, so you guys see this. Of course, you kind of see see that river that's being shown by the satellite or by the space station. Looks really big, right? Until you see how big that river is supposed to be. So then when you kind of understand what they're showing you is, yeah, it's a fisheye lens.
Right.
So you could be 10 feet in the air and you would see the edges of Earth. You ever seen people get on top of a mountain and use a fisheye lens? It looks like they're on the whole, they can see the edges on every side. That is not an actual image. It's an image, but it's been altered very clearly. And that's what they do all the time. You see, I pulled up another one that was pretty good. Here, let me see. If I'm gonna scan through my Twitter feed. Here's another. Oh yeah, there you go. Here's another one.
Yeah, that's a famous one. And that moon, when it goes around the Earth, doesn't turn. It's just stationary as it goes.
You can't believe that, but that picture on the bottom with the moon looking like a cookie, they'll claim that's real. Like that's a real picture.
It comes from like a little stop motion video, and the moon doesn't move. It moves, but it doesn't turn or anything. It just stays right there.
Can you believe? I mean, isn't it crazy when you actually think, like people? So this is like the people with like the cognitive dissonance. And it's like, so my dad, he liked a lot of videos that I made. He hated when I started talking about NASA, flat Earth stuff. He didn't like me when I talked about 9/11. He had his triggered topics that he didn't like. But I remember if I'd have showed him this bottom picture, he would say, "No, that's not real." He would say, "They don't say that's real," and I would be like, "Yeah, they do." And he he wouldn't believe that. But he would still believe everything else they said because he would actually see that, he would know that that's fake, and he couldn't defend it. I think that is the crazy thing.
God talks about the sun as a light and the moon as a light, and yet when the astronauts stood on it, like down here, you can read by moonlight sometimes, but when they were on it, it wasn't like blinding. What was that about? Did they go at night? When the sun wasn't around? Well, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, right. They went to the moon at daytime on the moon, which is funny to say, but yeah, they went at daytime on the moon. And again, that's why they would say that it was 250 degrees, the surface of the moon. But if you really think about it, like if the moon reflects like it does, like in that picture, or not in the picture, like in real life, when you see like how bright the moon is at night. Imagine how bright it would be to be on the moon's surface.
Exactly. Yeah. Why didn't
so you'd have the sun in the sky, right? The sun would be in your face, and then you would not be able to look away because it's like, can you imagine? Like it's kind of like if you went to some place that had like it was completely white, and so it was just, or it meant not like, we'll just say it was silver, and you were on the surface of something that was silver, and you had the sun on like a midday sun. Yeah. Just like they say, people go blind in those places, like in snowy environments, because
right.
Yeah, snow blindness, because it would be like that reflection with your eyes, yeah, you wouldn't be able to see anything. Here's another one: rocket goes up, then sideways, then down. It's like that's space travel.
Yeah. And again, I've done this for so many years and covered this, but when you look up like the Bermuda Triangle, that's where the ones in Cape Canaveral go off, and then they fall into that area. It's why it's cordoned off and told that you'll die or disappear there. But they always have like students somehow, You know, before the towers, they had these Israeli students that were there. They also had these students that were able to go in that area and see a bunch of rockets. I think it's still on YouTube. You can find it, just littered all over the floor of the ocean, because they go up and they come down.
And how sus is that in The Shining?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Stanley Kubrick, who a lot of people say allegedly had something to do with the filming of the moon landing. In his classic movie, The Shining, he's got, I mean, it kind of almost like Apollo 2, but I mean, yeah, it's Apollo 11.
11, yeah.
He's got a rocket on there. The kid's wearing that.
And you know, Stanley Kubrick
Yes.
did 2001 right before they did the moon landing, and there's pictures of him walking with all the people from, you know, from NASA and stuff. I mean, you can put them together and do the math on it.
Yeah, I would say the math says it's a hoax, possibly.
Right?
I mean, I guess that's my belief, and I guess that's the thing. It's like the NASA rabbit hole is just one of those funny ones when you start going down it. I think that's like the thing that I am not ever going to be a prove the flat Earth channel. Like that's really not something. I mean, obviously, if something presents itself to me that I can say, well, this is a pretty good proof of things, but I don't like to argue about it. I think to me, it's like that. I don't have to know how it all works. I know what the Bible says about it, and I know these people are lying to me.
Right.
So to me, once you start to actually see, and I seen enough to believe that the Bible is the true thing. The biblical cosmology makes sense to me. Empirically, with my own eyeballs, everything makes sense to me. And then these people lie. That's kind of how I'll leave it at. But I'm not going to be one of these people. Like, I've had people try to like say, "Do you want to debate this?" I'm like, I'm not.
No, what's the
I don't
point?
care if you believe it or not. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I can use my iPhone and
but
not
I
know
don't
how to
care
make
anymore.
it. Right? I can use my iPhone and not know how to make it. I can use it though. I can live here and know that I live on some kind of stationary flat space protected by a firmament because God told me so. I don't have to try to figure it out and prove it myself. My eyes tell me. My conscious brain tells me water seeks its old level. Water wasn't flying off the ball due to like gravity, and I mean none of that. It's all theories and unprovable. So they still have to prove their side. I don't need to prove that we don't live there.
There you go.
Yeah.
So
That's
the
where
real
they go.
question is, so the Bermuda Triangle, aka space. So the real question is, have you considered this? And I can't remember if we talked about this on any other live streams we did. That okay, so if this plane is surrounded by an ice wall, which was fascinating. I saw a very interesting video on Instagram that it was showing that the ice wall, they say the average height of the ice in Antarctica at the edge is 2,160 meters tall. So like with a three feet per meter, that's really big. That's just really
Right.
big. That's like over a mile high. Okay, so what if those rockets are not going to the Bermuda Triangle? What if they are going over to outer space? You know, like outer space is the space that's outside this plane. You know, I was saying like, so on my last live stream, I did a video with Seven Club, and I think if you can get him on your show, I think you'd enjoy talking to him. He does a lot of biblical cosmology, flat earth stuff on TikTok, and we were discussing the concept that that the circuit of the sun shows us the inhabitable world that we can live on. You know, like so the circuit would go around this area of the sun, right?
Right.
But the plane of the Earth, like considering like the moon map, is much bigger than this.
Right.
But so the circuit of the sun has changed over the different eons, the different ages. Think the age of Aries, the age of Aquarius. Well, I mean, maybe if we're in Aquarius, age of Pisces, the previous ages. So depending on the equinox, the sun moves. Like not just that it spins on a circle, but the circuit moves. And that's why like the science now is saying the poles are moving. It's because, and is that possibly that you have the electromagnetic field that like the toroidal field, it's the center of it can shift. and then that's when the sun moves on a different circuit. So
Well, don't forget. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, so what people don't understand is like, so the land would not move, the ice wall would move depending on the circuit of the sun, because it would either freeze or melt in different areas and continue to refreeze and continue to have a circular a circle that contains all the things here, and that moves. The land, which land's exposed, moves. So, which obviously, if the Earth is bigger than that altogether, yeah, the Prague clock, somebody mentioned, it's possible that those rockets could just be going to the other side, going past the ice wall, where there is literally extra terrain, extraterrestrial. There's different planets, different smaller planes outside of this, and it would be really cold. It'd be really dark. It would kind of be like outer space. What do you think?
I mean, that's an interesting theory on it. Again, I can't say that's any more true or less true than any of the other ones, but I do know there's a bunch of rockets at the bottom of the ocean. That's provable. So whether some of them are getting out past the ice wall, I can't tell you, obviously. But you know, it's an interesting theory. I do totally believe in a moon map of some kind, because wouldn't it be, because I know God has a sense of humor, 100%. And wouldn't it be just like him to say, okay, you want to see where you live? Boom, I'll put it on the moon. You can see it, like this reflection of where you live kind of thing. I totally believe that there's something to that. But yeah, where we live and what we can get to. And don't forget, he said that the sun and the moon were there for what? And the stars were there not just for the lights, but to show you the seasons and the time. And so also, like you're saying, the time that we're in, this particular year and millennial, whatever, it shifted to where this is. Yeah, those are cool, those clocks.
Well, I mean, outside, I mean, like this only, I think the Prague clock only makes sense in what I'm saying is like that it's only showing you a part of the world. And like, so the zodiac, the Mazzaroth goes around it in a certain fashion, but obviously it leads you to believe this thing actually enters into different parts of the greater realm. You know, so like the ice wall would be the edge for us, but maybe we could never get to the firmament, like the flat, you know, like from the plane that we're on. Maybe we could reach it from the height of it, but we could never get to the edge of it because we'd be blocked by the ice. I just think that's interesting because, yeah, like that biblically, there's room for this. I mean, is this stated in the scriptures? I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying that I feel like that there is room for this to be true. And this gives me one of the best reasons cases I've ever had to say, why would they lie? Well, they would lie to show you that this is all the land there is. Don't worry. Don't even try to go that way to Antarctica, because all you're going to do is end up on the other side of the ball, right? When guys like Admiral Byrd literally said that there was land that was searched past, that was like as big as the United States.
I think the main thing that you got to see is that all the countries that have signed that treaty to not ever go, you know, use it or whatever, they can't even get along in the real world. Like they're enemies in the real world, but they're okay all signing on the peace treaty in Antarctica. They're enemies in the real world, but they can all coexist in space on the ISS. Like it's such a theater, and it's so easy to see the exposition of it.
Well, you know, it's interesting. My buddies did a podcast. They were talking about sky ice, and some of you, have you ever looked into that?
What is it?
It's called sky ice, and supposedly they drill it and they mess with it. It's like super cold. It literally there's supposedly there's a wall down there made of this stuff called sky ice, and it's like it literally frozen oxygen, and it's so cold they've tried to tunnel through it, and it refreezes all the time, and they don't even know how thick it is. Some people have obviously speculated that could be what the firmament's made of, like frozen oxygen. And it is interesting when they talk about getting so high up in the sky, it gets cold.
Right. It doesn't get hot the closer you get to the sun, it gets cold. Exactly.
Right. Right. So there's
And don't forget, everything here is alive. Even the earth is a living thing, or nothing could grow on it. And the firmament is described as a living thing. And so it's going to go through the same processes. And that's why I think some of it comes off and we find these different crystals or minerals, or, I've talked about, I think, pearlite and some of these other ones. But the firmament, it makes sense that if you can't get through it, every time they try to like drill into it, they can't get past a certain amount. We can only go 8 miles deep, and yet they tell us that the center of the Tootsie Pop is this molten core. And that's all BS. You know what I mean?
well, that again, that's a trust me, bro, science thing where like, yeah, they've showed us for years the levels of it. And I did a video not that long ago that they were saying they discovered oceans under the ground
Right. I did
that are way bigger than the oceans on the surface of the earth. And I'm like, that is biblical. Of course, now what they still try to say that it's porous rock. Okay, so how is it that much bigger than the ocean then? And of course, it's through some kind of instrument that they have that he said, just trust me, it works. But when they say that there's more water under the earth than there is on the surface, like that literally is what the Bible says. That what's interesting about the graven images in one of the commandments is it said, do not make images of things in the heavens or the things in the earth and the waters under the earth. You ever looked at that scripture? That's literally what the Bible says. And I was like, that's an interesting way to write things. The waters under the earth. And there's this there's a connection with Sheol and hell and the deep, the ocean.
Well, when I look at this idea of the firmament, excuse me. So you have what do I have here? We have like the flat living space that, or maybe it looks like this with hills and valleys and stuff. And we live here. So if you have, let's say a firmament dome up here, okay, great. But God says there's water above and below. So it's got to go around down here too. So there's your ball, right?
Right.
Of the firmament. So when people are debating the sun and the moon and is it going to be 24 hours in Antarctica and all this BS, they're going with the assumption that it's just this firmament up here. But if they're connected to the firmament, who's to say that in rotation they don't go underneath and then back over through portals on the other side? I don't know how it works. Nobody does. But the idea that if you look at like these planetary maps and they say the moon right now is underneath you, when you look at it on a phone or something, it's that three-dimensional concept that I think, or 4D, whatever, that the moon and the sun could do something to where they could go somewhere around. We don't actually know how that all works, but the whole idea that the firmament has to protect us all the way around.
Oh yeah, here we go. Let's see. Let me pull this up. This actually illustrates what you're talking about right here.
Yeah, that's a very famous one.
Yeah, so it is. It's funny because it's kind of almost like the hidden in plain sight. Oh, it's a globe. It's a ball, but the earth is not a ball. And it's interesting again, like biblically, the Bible talks about the earth and the water not being the same thing. When they try to tell you, the science says that what the earth is like, was it 70% or 80% water or something? Well, by definition, earth is like ground. It's like land. So it's really not, it can't be that percent water. Because that's why, like I said, I think that sometimes you get a little bit of things lost in translation because we're ingrained in our brains about a globe and the earth being a planet. But back in the day, somebody picked up some dirt and they'd say, check out this earth in my hand. It doesn't mean it's the whole thing. So the earth is the land. The water is not the earth. It's the deep.
When you go to
the waters
science,
above it. Yeah.
Science says the water landed here because we smashed into like a planet made of water. I mean, everything always comes from outer space. Diamonds came from that way. Gold came from that way. That's all from outer space. They have no answers.
Did you know that I learned this a while back? Do you know who the biggest exporter of diamonds in the world is? Who owns more diamonds than anybody?
Well, you're not talking to Beers. Who you mean?
Well, I mean, yeah, that's one of the families that owns it. But do you know which country owns all the diamonds? And I know the obvious answer is going to be South Africa.
Well, I know Russia has a big holdings of stuff. What do you?
I know there was a guy this guy got canceled this clothing brand. He's been, I don't know how this guy's not banned yet, but it was Israel. Israel owns more diamonds than any other country.
Good night, everyone. Yeah.
I
They
mean,
say all roads lead to Rome. Doesn't seem that seems incorrect.
what's great, what's crazy about that too is the fact that this is the scam. Talk about a conspiracy that, again, I think most people, if they just, it's very obvious when you actually think about it. Diamonds are obviously very practical because they're one of the hardest stones known to man. It can cut stuff, diamond tip blades and all that kind of stuff. But diamonds are not rare. They're controlled. They're controlled. How many diamonds are in the earth? I mean, obviously, it sounds like they probably have a ridiculous amount. So they don't let that many out. You know how diamonds aren't really worth that much?
Tell me.
Try to go sell a diamond ring, a used one. You can't hardly sell it.
I've got one other thing for you. You want to take it biblically? God talks about the throne and things in heaven, and he names all these different gemstones and the ones on Aaron's breastplate. There's no mention of diamonds.
Isn't there? There's no diamond in there?
I don't remember hearing it.
Maybe the Mandela effect maybe changed. Yeah. Point being is that you have these other precious stones, but the point is like that those kind of stones, like the resale value is not very good on it. But you can sell your gold.
Right.
But you can't sell used diamonds like that. You can get trade-ins and stuff like that. And they actually said if the diamonds would be nothing if the resale value of diamonds were good, because there's so many of them out there. But gold, on the other hand, you can sell that because gold is limited. It's a commodity. Diamonds are not. I think that's pretty interesting. It's a total scam, though.
And you're right. I'm looking at it now, and he does have diamond in some of these. I don't remember that, but there's 3 times it's mentioned in the Bible now that I see, or 4. So
can I go off on a little tangent? It was funny. I've been reading. I was reading a while back, and I was reading in. This is interesting. I kind of wanted to bring this up. Gary Wayne. He did the Genesis 6 conspiracy. Have you ever read that book?
I know of it. Yeah. I haven't read it specifically myself.
So Gary Wayne is kind of like big in the space that I was in recently. I did the movie Ancient Angels. And so he has the Genesis 6 conspiracy. Obviously, it's all about Nephilim and giants and secret societies and stuff like that. Obviously, it's kind of was my bread and butter for a minute. And he was just on Sam Tripoli's podcast, the Tinfoil Hat podcast, which I was on, which I think was pretty great, is that he was on there promoting his new book, which again is about giants and end time stuff. And it's like the days of Noah stuff. And as you guys have probably heard me say this, I have had to repent for pushing that whole days of Noah nonsense that everybody does who talks about Nephilim and angels and stuff. When Jesus says it'll be like the days of Noah when the Son of Man returns, he says exactly what he means. He says people will be drinking, they'll be marrying, they'll be given into marriage, and then the flood came and they'll be unprepared for it. He does not mean there's going to be Nephilim everywhere. He does not mean it'll be like giants and hybrids and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't mean there wasn't, but obviously if we're in the little season, he meant what he said. The people in Jerusalem were not ready when it happened. And that's what the story was really about. So he's on there talking about the end times. So Sam Tripoli asks him about the short season. Could we be in the short season? And Gary Wayne's answer was so cringe. I mean, you have to wonder sometimes with people like this because he's very learned. He kind of comes from things more like in a scholarly way, kind of like a Michael Heiser type, where I'm not sure what Gary Wayne's affiliation was, if he was in a school setting, if he was a professor at some point. But one of the reasons he said he didn't believe in the short season is because he can trace his family's genealogies back a couple hundred years. And I was like, well, that's anecdotal, and I don't care about your like who cares? First of all, we're not saying you can't trace your. I mean, I'm not one of those people who believe that in the short season we're all the resurrected dead if we're like reincarnated. I don't believe that. I believe that there was people who survived, and then we're the remnants of those people, and likely we probably are related to maybe some of the orphan train stuff. Obviously, some people were not related to the orphan train people. They were related to probably some aristocrats. But that was one of his reasons. And again, he was still pushing this idea. And it's interesting. It always comes back to this, is like that we get viewed with all these people. We get labeled as like replacement theology type people, because we believe that 70 AD was a pretty final act for that age. That age ended with the destruction of the temple, the destruction of Jerusalem. Their national identity was wiped out in 70 AD. And the fact that we point that out, people try to make us sound like that we are anti-Semitic or something.
Mhm.
It continues to come up, and I just like I'm like fist palming when I'm like hearing that this guy that I respected a lot, and I'm like, man, I'm not, again, I don't try to push the little season as a salvation issue, but he was twisted. I mean, he was definitely wiggling around, and it was laughable, the things he was saying. I was totally unimpressed, and I feel like that when you start looking into the little season, I think he's a glober. He believes in the ball earth. He's obviously way out of this, and you start to see people who still cling to the ball earth. They reject all the stuff about 78 and you never talk about it. And then they start pushing end time stuff. I mean, gosh, like the respect level I used to have for some of these people, I'm just like, they're just making stuff up.
Right.
I mean, are they making stuff up to sell books? I mean, it sounds like.
Yeah, I found, like, in the community that I came out of, they call themselves flat earthers. I believe in biblical earth or cosmology now.
Mhm.
Some of them I don't even think believed in what they were selling, but they were doing it to, like you said, for whatever monetary gain they can get out of whatever, books, meetups, I don't know, clothing, whatever they can, and sell it to. It's just like they see a bunch of people into something and they join in, and suddenly they're discussing it like, they're one of you. But no, I don't think they believe in it at all, some of them, honestly. Can
Yeah,
I
it's.
show real
Oh,
quick
go ahead.
on the screen share?
Yeah, let me stop this.
Let's see. How's this work? Presentation screen. Okay. Which one do I want? Tab. Yeah.
This was supposed to be a Q&A.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know
No, it's funny. I was like, no, this is not your fault. I don't think I've asked anybody any questions. Does anyone have any questions while we're still hanging out?
This is from my outro that I have. Look at that. Can you see that?
Uh-huh.
So, which Earth do we live on?
Well, I guess it depends on who photoshopped it.
Well, right. And there's the guy. He tells you he photoshops it.
He looks embarrassed right there. It looks like he just got
Doesn't
caught
he?
doing
Yeah.
something.
You hear the interview with him. Let's see. Is it here? Oh, I can't do this. Anyways. But you get the idea. Somewhere here he shows the clouds. No, maybe not. Have to let it play.
Yeah, it's no, I mean, I think I guess it's the thing. It's like that you like wonder why do they have to Photoshop clouds? Why don't they show us real pictures if they could?
Right. I mean, they could shut everyone up in a second. All they have to do, take a photo from space. Here it is. Everyone shut up. You got the distance there and what they say the Earth versus the moon. And yet, look, they can't. That's that famous one again. It doesn't make any sense. And there's that one you were saying. This is that one he showed from the Apollo 11. That was fake.
Yeah, that's a version. That's a version of that.
And you can find where they actually do that through that Photoshop editing, and you see this is a cutout that's been pasted.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's so easy to spot. So
isn't it funny? Isn't it funny too how like even that video of where the horizon is on the moon, how close it is? You know what I'm saying? Like, so the moon is X big, right? It's a certain size. It's bigger than the United States. But if you're from what they're showing you from the surface of the moon and seeing the horizon, it looks like it's it's like 10 feet away. You know what I'm saying? Like it looks really close. It's completely fake.
and then Pluto, which was discovered in
Oh, yeah.
1930, and Pluto, which was drawn in 1930. He fits perfectly in there.
Well, I made a video about this, and actually, I was a little confused. Isn't it crazy though that okay, so Pluto and the dog, the cartoon dog, Mickey Mouse's dog, and the
Right.
planets were named like the same year.
Right, 1930, same year. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think they say that the planet was named first, but what people don't really question at all is the fact that Walt Disney named his dog Pluto, and Pluto was not named after the planet. Pluto is named after the god of the underworld.
Correct.
Like another name of his is Hades, which is interesting when you think about so Hades is where we get the idea of hell from. So what's interesting, I always thought, is like in the Bible that death and hell get tossed in the lake of fire at the end. Isn't it funny that they're not, so we're thinking like hell and death are like concepts or they're places or they're but it's interesting to think about them as actual entities.
Correct.
Like fallen angels. And when you see Pluto is the god of hell, basically. And is he the one who gets thrown into the lake of fire? Why did Walt Disney name Mickey Mouse's dog after him?
Well, none of that makes. First of all, why does a mouse own a dog? But that's a whole other story, right?
And why if Goofy's a dog and Pluto's a dog?
Yeah,
What's up,
Pluto
Scott?
doesn't get to talk. He's a subservient. Whatever. But yeah, it's how about what's his name? Werner von Braun, and he dies, and he puts that psalm on there that talks about the firmament. Like it's such in your face that we didn't go to space. He's the head Nazi in NASA.
Well, do you think that he? So obviously, you could maybe believe maybe the glass is half full. Do you think he put that on there to mock us, or did he have a change of heart later in his life to put that on there? Because that's pretty morbid to put that on your grave.
I look at it as an option C. I think he did it to put that out there for both reasons, so that people can say he's just mocking the flat earth people, or he is telling you the truth. Because again, if even people that aren't religious believe that we have God-given free will, well, the only way that you can get messed with is you have to give your consent. So if the head of NASA on his gravestone says, "Hey, we're not getting out of this place," and everyone goes, "Oh, that's funny," and then still believe in space, and then Tesla's got a car that's flying to the sun, then you've given away your free will because you gave up your cognitive, you know what I mean? You've bought into the story, even though you see it. Elon Musk even says it must be real because it looks so fake. And you can see glitches of that car when it was flying around the earth where the green screen came in. I mean, you could still find them on the internet. And now it's going to the sun, and everyone's just cool with that.
Yeah, check this out. So
they laugh at you if you say, "I don't think this stuff's real," but they have to believe that there's a Tesla whose tires never blow out and the guy didn't fly out and the temperature changes didn't bubble the paint and all that. It's doing fine.
Yeah, how about that? Werner von Braun, 1912 to 1977, Psalm 19:1.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that says, and that verse says that what the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament is his handiwork, which is interesting. I again, translation issues. Some people would say that they would replace firmament with sky. But if you think about it, it actually makes a lot of sense when it says firmament, because so the heavens declare the glory. So obviously all the things you can see declare his glory, but the firmament shows his handiwork. And if you think about that, what that means is to just think about the Truman Show. When he gets to the edge of whatever he is and he puts his hand on it, he knows this has been created by somebody. Right? So if people knew you lived under a dome, they would obviously know that there was a creator, because somebody would have had to put that there. And I do think I think it actually makes a lot of sense in that way. That yeah, like that the firmament shows the handiwork of a creator. Makes sense to me.
Yeah. No, I agree. But yeah, so why did he put that on there? The guy that, promotes space. Plus, those of us that believe in the Mandela effect, the H is new. It weren't her. Other thing. But yeah, so all right, so we've totally blown through all kinds of things with no question and answer. Did you want to do questions?
Yeah, we can do it. We can do it if you guys got any question and answer. Yeah, because obviously that's I did. I'll have to Mandela effect the thumbnail later, and I'll say, oh, there was no Q&A advertised. You guys just remembered that. You guys got any questions for me or for CFM?
I always, whenever I try to do Q&A, I never get any Qs.
Yeah. So the one thing I wanted to bring up with Gary Wayne though was that when I read his book, and I remember like one of my first, I want to say one of my first big videos, but I did a pretty extensive video talking about how Lucifer was not the devil. Like, so everybody gets Isaiah 14 is where you get Lucifer from. And I said that once I started to read my Bible, I really started to get annoyed by all that church dogma stuff. We're saying, well, the devil was actually once named Lucifer and he was a music leader in heaven. And I'm like, all right, where are they getting that from? I was like, I didn't
know. What did he play?
Well, that's what they say. And so what they do is they do a couple of different things. Is they take Isaiah 14, and that's where you get, Daystar, son of the dawn, is one translation, but then Lucifer is how it's translated in the KJV. It's not a name. Like, so Lucifer is not a name. Like a lot of the beings in the Bible, they're descriptions, they're not names. Like, we don't really probably know what God's real name is. Like, maybe the God the Father doesn't even have a name, because
we don't know.
Because who would call him a name? Somebody have to give you a name. And so the only angels' names that are listed in the Bible are Gabriel and Michael. Nobody else's names listed. None of the angels are listed in the Bible. So Lucifer is not his name, for one. And for two, Isaiah 14 is a taunt of the king of Babylon. And if you actually look up the description of this being, it actually sounds like a tyrannical king who killed people, conquered people, who was cast down into the pit. Now, what they do is they take that chapter and then they piggyback it with Isaiah or Ezekiel 28 that talks about the king of Tyre. Now, I believe that is the devil. The king of Tyre is, for one, he's a cherub. He's in the garden of God. He was in Eden. So it mentions all these descriptions, how he's this powerful angel that was beautiful, was perfect when he was created. He was prideful. Those are all the descriptions we get of the devil. But one thing you don't get is, like, when you read Isaiah 14 and you read Ezekiel 28 together, they're not the same being. They're just not. And if you can show me how you got from here to there, okay, maybe I'll hear you out. But I don't see any of that. What they do is they take Lucifer and they say that this is him. But they're not this. But again, they're not. The authors are different. The books are different. Nothing's the same about it. And so that's when they start to wax poetic about Lucifer was this, Lucifer was that, Lucifer. And I'm like, that's like when you get in like the guys like Tim Alberino, guys like Gary Wayne, and they have these very elaborate stories about Lucifer. And you're like, you guys are just making stuff up. Like, this is not in the Bible. This is not even in the Apocrypha, because this is not in Enoch. This is not in Second Esdras. This is not in anything else. So where are you getting that from? And the more I start to see that, I'm like, what am I reading? This is fan fiction. I don't want to read fan fiction. I was like, just say you don't know. We don't need to know everything about this being. Otherwise, God would have wrote more, he would have put more stuff in the Bible about it. He would have told his prophets more things to know about this being. But one thing I find interesting is that, for one, Gary Wayne always says that all these angels were seraphim, the fiery ones, these serpents. But guess what? The being in Ezekiel 28 is called a cherub. He's not called a seraphim. He's literally called a cherub. And so the other thing is, people say that he's a music leader or something like that. But I find it very interesting. In Ezekiel 28, it mentions the stones that are on this being. And it's very similar to how it's described, like Aaron, the high priest. So Aaron had 12 different precious stones on his ephod.
Right.
And it mentions that in Ezekiel 28 that the king of Tyre walked amongst the fiery stones. And so I believe that the devil was not, he was not a music leader. I think he was like a high priest in heaven. I think he had something to do with God's altar. Like you think in Isaiah, it talks about the fiery stones and even like the coal that burns, that's taken from the altar, that like it's basically where God's at. I think that's what the devil really did. He was like, because it talks about him profaning his sanctuaries and then him being cast out. I don't know. That was just a long rant just to say that there's a lot of mysteries about that kind of stuff. And I do think that it's like, I guess it's like, I used to get really into like researching that kind of stuff, but then sometimes put your point, like it's a little bit, I don't know. I guess it's a little bit like kind of, I don't know, verboten to like really go seek out too many details about the devil. I guess, what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you on that. I feel that. But it's interesting to bring it all home again to the Olympics. There's your star falling from heaven. There's your Lucifer from that the golden whatever creature that thing was.
So that was my contention when I made a video about this, though, that Lucifer is not the devil. The being that's Lucifer was a man, because he literally is called a man. Like, this is the man who shook the nations. Like, they're gonna, like, when he's in the pit, the other kings are going to say, look at like, who is he? And that's why I think that's what always tripped me up, was like that. So when he goes down to the pit, to the underworld, people are going to be like, is this really him? And I always thought, so when the devil is actually exposed to everybody, he's really going to be pathetic? Because that's not what
it sounds like. It sounds like, wow, this is what we were afraid of. Yeah.
So, but what I think, but see, my thought process was that possibly Isaiah 14 is about Nimrod, because Nimrod shook the nations. Nimrod tried to ascend his throne above, up to the stars of God. You think about building a tower up. He was building a tower up, but he got cast down. And so I believe that Nimrod is where all the sun god worship comes from. Nimrod was like the son of the devil, basically. So I think that like the Apollo stuff is Apollo, Tammuz, you have Shamash, all these different sun gods. That is where we get the worship of a man as the son of God.
And that ties right into the whole conversation I've had with the Statue of Liberty, how it matches up identical with that Lucifer painting, and then the 7 on the crown and the torch of light in its hand, and the fact that it looks more like Owen Wilson than a woman. So it's and then when you look at its feet, it's got one chain broken free, which I believe it shows us that Satan's been loosed in the world. But that statue represents Lucifer. Yeah, that all tracks.
Well, like that's what I think. The way I came to that conclusion was Revelation 9:11 is about the king of the bottomless pit, and it says a star falls. So you think about like Revelation 12, Satan gets cast out of heaven, and so it mentions Revelation 9:1 is a star falls, an angel falls, is given the keys, and then he lets go. So the dragon gives his authority over to this beast, which I believe that is Apollyon. I believe that was probably Nimrod, like your first Antichrist figure. And I believe that's like the son of the devil. And I think that some of that imagery could come from that. Yeah, I mean, like the Statue of Liberty. I mean, again, like the devil has many names. This is kind of confusing because,
right.
But I think it also makes sense that this being like Lucifer is worshipped as a man too. And I think that's ultimately like the lie from the serpent all along was you can be as gods. So what more way would it be as a god than this man who was a god versus the dragon who gave his authority over to this being? Because, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I guess that's my thought process. So like, I think that's why like Apollo, a lot of people don't realize this, and even in the Greek mythology, Apollo, his parents weren't both fully divine. So his dad was Zeus. His mom was, I think, named Leto, and she was only partially divine. So biblically, you would say that Apollo was a Nephilim, which I think the interesting stuff about like Lucifer or Nimrod, there's a very good comparable person to him. historically named Sargon of Akkad, and he was like the first. He was like the founder of, like, I think Akkad is one of the, I think it's one of the cities, I think it's mentioned, that Nimrod founds, and his lineage is very murky. He claimed he didn't know his father, and his mother was a changeling. So like this being is like more than half of a god, like 3/4 of a god or something like that.
Mhm.
And there you go. There's your Apollo, there's your Nimrod, there's your Tammuz, all that stuff, divine conception and all that stuff.
And I think, whatever the different names are, the representation of Zeus, I think George Washington, at least the person that they show us, was probably one of them. I mean, the four heads that are on the Mount Rushmore, I think they were all some kind of demigod, kind of half human god creatures, whatever they were, or fallen ones. Because I went to DC, and this is before I was even awake to all this, and I have a photo of it. They got a statue of George Washington. He's shirtless, and he's doing the as above, so below pose with a sword. And then when you look closely, his feet, and I've done deep dives on it. They don't even look human. Like there's a weird bend, an extra ankle or something, and there's just weirdness to it. And so I believe they had them, making statues for them when they were ruling everything.
Let me see this. Yeah, let me see it. Like that. This is a pretty crazy statue. That, yeah. Well, I did a video about this. Actually, I think I got some pretty decent run. Let me see. It was,
Yeah, you could get a close up on his foot too. That one that's sticking out. It's not normal.
well, yeah. So he's clearly doing like the Baphomet pose right there.
Correct.
It also comes from a very famous like Zeus statue. And so,
Right. I think it's the same person, George Washington and Zeus.
if you guys have ever seen that documentary by the Fall brothers, and it's called Belly of the Beast, and it was all about kind of Washington, the Freemasonry angle. And when a new president gets inaugurated, every year they would do like every time that happened, the Scottish, like the Scottish Freemasonry building in DC, which actually I went and saw over in April, which is crazy. And they do this raising of Osiris ceremony. And so the spirit of Osiris is basically starts with like George Washington, and believes like the way they believe it. Even though it's interesting, people don't know that George Washington is not the first president. George Washington is like, depending on like what kind of metric you use, he's like the 16th or he's like the 8th, because there was presidents before him. There was presidents of the Continental Congress, but then there was presidents of the United States. So George Washington was like the first president after the first elected president after the Constitution was ratified, because he wasn't even the first president after the Constitution, because there was a guy before him when the Constitution was ratified. So
and
why
don't
is he
forget, on his tombstone it says Freemason, and then it says president.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's interesting. So you have.
Can I screen share this picture?
Yeah, do that.
Okay. Let's see. I click here. I think it's this one. Yeah. Okay. All right. Can you see that?
Okay. Let's see the statue.
Yeah. Okay.
He looks really evil there.
Right. Look at his eyes. Let's see. Oh, it's even larger here. Let's see. Look at this.
Yeah,
right?
he looks pissed.
Demon Eyes from Supernatural, that show, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but wait, check this out. When you go all the way down, look at this foot. That's really make it smaller. Look at that's not right.
That chair's a little creepy too. Like it looks like it's got.
Yeah, there's tiger. There's like beast. What do you call it? Claws and stuff on the chair. Here.
It reminds me of Ghostbusters.
Right. Look at that.
Oh yeah, it almost kind of you got those vibes of like that. They had Gozer. You have like the Keymaster and like the
right.
Like the two like Zool. Yeah, those two like the demon dogs, and I think they came from like some kind of Chinese mythologies. They're supposed to be like
But
guardians.
if this is his heel, what the hell's going on here?
It's very
Like, his
serpent.
leg
It's very serpent-like.
down, and it's serpent-like, I guess. Yeah, you're right. But look, his leg comes straight down, then it bends, and then it looks like an ankle bone, and then a heel down here, and this really long. It just, I don't know. It's just so creepy. And then, of course, he's doing the bafflement pose. So I think this is probably closer to what he really looked like, and he was a giant, and he had powers. You know what I mean? And
Yeah. So here's the crazy thing is like that. So they show, yeah, and I've done a few videos talking about this, the apotheosis of George Washington. So if you go into the Capitol building, the rotunda, and it's like, so we're taught that there's going to be Thomas Jefferson wanted some separation of church and state. BS. Obviously, he's the one who wanted everything built like temples in DC. So he didn't want, he wanted a separation of church and state. Get out of here with that. So they actually painted the Capitol building, the rotunda, painted it up to put all these Greek gods up there, Vulcan, Neptune, Columbia, all these different gods and goddesses. And then you had George Washington. The apotheosis literally means ascending to be a god. So what's crazy is, again, this is, you think this is made up, this is not made up. There's a part of the Capitol building they call the tomb. And supposedly they built the tomb so they could bury George Washington inside the Capitol building, but they didn't. Right? So they did not build them.
Mount Herman or something.
So you have an empty tomb in what they call the crypt at the Capitol building. And so George Washington's body is not in the tomb, but where his body is on the ceiling because he ascended to be a god. Now, how, like, you know, if you think about like that kind of the symbolism there, that is crazy. Like, that is absolutely crazy to me. Oh, gosh.
Well, as you're talking, I can't help myself. This thing has Mandela affected so many times. This is the statue of David. And we all know the story of David and Goliath with the slingshot, right? His eyes now have hearts in them. This is the actual statue. But even more disturbing, his slingshot is now become a phallic symbol. And now it's grown, like, since I've covered this, it has, like, seriously, I mean, I don't know how far we can talk about it. Testicles right here. I mean, and
Yeah,
what the heck?
That's uncomfortable looking right there.
It is, but that's the actual statue. Yeah. So there's that.
You know what's interesting too? I found about like that. I feel like the devil tries to copy lots of things that obviously are gods. Like that's not a new revelation. But if you think about Apollo and David, you ever notice like the statues? Like, I mean, like obviously the way his face looks and everything, he looks a lot like the statues to Apollo.
Right.
So Apollo was known for like obviously being light. He played the lyre. You know, he played instrument, right? He played. He was like a god of youth. He's never depicted with a beard, right? And then so you think about David. David obviously was a musician. He was a prophet. He was a warrior. And what was the other thing? So it's almost like that the enemy decided to put David's attributes on the sun god. Because if you think about it, like, so that's one of, I think that Apollo is a god of prophecy. Mm-hmm. He's a god of music. He's a god of youth and vigor. And yeah, look at him. I mean, like that statue to Apollo. Right. I mean, the statue to David looks a lot like Apollo, right?
Right. That just blew me away when I started like that statue. I'm scared to keep going back and seeing what's going to change on it next.
Well, and that's also the same as like the Greek. It's like the Greek cover up of trying to. It was trying to like take Samson and Hercules. Like look up the stories about Hercules. Like then you see like he literally takes the gates, moves the gates. That's straight out of the Book of Judges. The stuff like tying the foxes, the tails with fire, and all that kind of stuff. All these things that Hercules did. It's like literally the devil just took stories from the Bible and they start to give those attributes and those stories, those legends, those myths to his demonic sons.
Yeah. Well, I keep finding, I mean, when I started reading the Bible, I kept going, wow, it seems like everything's plagiarized from the Bible. I mean, there's that entire one psalm that is, what's that song by the Birds? Turn, 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 everything.
Oh,
you know,
yeah. Mhm.
everything. I was reading, I'm like, I'm singing it in my head, like, oh, I recognize this, you know, and there's so many things that are taken from the Bible that are used on a daily basis. And yet people don't, like myself, I didn't know, came from there, you know, and the fact that until just recently, it didn't matter what religion you were, it didn't matter if you believed in Jesus or not, the entire world was basing their calendar off of BC and AD of who? Jesus Christ. And it didn't matter who you believed in. If you wanted to do business in the regular world, you worked off of that timeline. Only now it seems like the more we talk about it, now suddenly it's BCE and CE. They're trying to what? Separate God again from the storyline. But throughout history, it's always been BC and AD, period. Even the Jews that have their own calendar still work BC and AD.
Yeah, I think that I see. I have to do a podcast all about this, but I think that was one of the first things that, I don't know, for some reason it just hit me like a ton of bricks, thinking about the events of the first century and all the stuff that likely happened afterwards. Again, I'm not one of these people who believe it all had to happen in the first century. I believe there was the judgment on the harlot in the first century. Then the judgment on the beast was later. You know, I don't think Rome wasn't built in a day, didn't fall in a day. So point being is, you have Rome falls in 536-ish AD, which is right when that year was like the worst year of all time. This is what I could do. I got to do a podcast all about 536. It was 18 months of darkness. There was plague, and they literally say it brought on the dark ages. So if you think about, like, the story is, that's right around when they decided to change the calendar from whatever it was before to say, let's go back and, because it's like, it's funny just to think about, like, that BC counts down to 0, right? But obviously at some point it was not counting down. It was just like, it was counting.
Right. It only counted down after, yeah.
It only counted down afterwards. But the idea that anybody could change the way we date things forever, and everyone was okay with that. And it was all based on this man who was supposedly not who he said he was. Right. Got killed by the Romans. And then the Romans the Romans or the Byzantine Empire, they decide to elevate this martyr, and everything is shifted on that. And without something supernaturally happening.
Right. Why'd they choose this one guy?
Why would they choose this one guy? I mean, I really do think, like, when you have to think about it like that, just that the Romans worship many gods for forever. And obviously, again, you understand, like, the same pantheon of gods, the names change, the locations change, but all the stories are relatively the same. As I said, it was interesting to go back into, like, the Greeks. So a biblical location is talked about a lot is Tyre. Mm-hmm. There's a very famous battle where Alexander the Great wanted to go worship in the temple. There was Tyre, like the mainland Tyre, but there was a city that was an island, and it was like, I guess this was probably like the best part of it. And they had this crazy temple to a god called Melkart, and so Alexander the Great wanted to go worship in this temple. Well, they wouldn't let him. They said, you can go worship in the other temple to Melkart on the mainland. And so this made Alexander the Great so mad that he basically, I think he was destroying parts of the city, and he was literally throwing it into the sea to make a bridge across to get to the land. And then eventually he destroys the island. Well, so why did he care about worshiping in the temple of Melkart? Because he knew Melkart as Hercules. You know what I'm saying? So all these different polytheistic pagan religions all worship the same gods. Mm-hmm. And then one day they said, that's illegal. Christianity is the religion of the whole world. And everybody was okay with that. we're going to change the calendar. We're going to change everything based on this one guy who got crucified. You know what I mean? Like, I know that obviously it's the truth and we believe in Jesus, but I mean, like the idea that the whole world just went along with that without the events of Revelation playing out makes no sense to me. Without people really seeing the hand of God working in a crazy supernatural day of the Lord, wrath, buildings, mountains melting like wax, islands being removed, plague, darkness, everything. Like, how could that happen without, like how could anything happen without that? I just don't see it.
No, it's a very valid point because, like I said, why are we using, like you said, this calendar, BC and AD, unless there was some major event that happened that everyone said, oh, okay, well, let's start counting from here now that he's dead, and everything before this will count backwards. You know what I mean? It's like something occurred to change the mindset in that, and a way that they got a lot of people to go along. They took the pagan holidays and they just morphed them and called them Christian ones. Like, I'm under the camp that I don't believe that Jesus was born December 25th in the middle of winter because they weren't out in the fields. It makes way more sense that he was born on that day in September.
Yeah,
because
September
we live
11th.
in today's world, we're going to take and make the most amazing day in the history of mankind and make it one of the worst thought about days. That makes sense to me rather than, the 25th. But that's not to say I'm not one of these doom and gloom guys. I won't celebrate Christmas. No, what I'll do is I'll celebrate with my family and friends or whatever that want to feel that, and you can use that to help celebrate joy and understanding of God and Jesus, even though in your head it's not the right date, most likely. I still believe that you can do it as long as you don't fall into the trap of all the stuff that God says not to do. Like, literally, it says in the Bible, don't do like the heathens and cut a tree out of the forest and bring it into your house and decorate it. He literally, look it up, people. It's in the Bible. It's so funny that it's right there.
Well, yeah. So it says the BC AD system probably established in early first century, second century. It says that it was the Christian monk, of course, funny, Dionysus, his name, exegesis, in the year 525. So what they want you to believe is they decided to change the system right when the Dark Ages started. Right? You think, like you said, you see what we're saying, like in the idea of the short season, where a lot of people say, hey, what if the Dark Ages were not actually the Dark Ages? What if those were the Light Ages? And that's when they decided they're going to go backwards and they're going to change the previous dates to honor Jesus. They're literally going to call it the year of our Lord.
Exactly.
That's what AD means. Year of our Lord. Like, that is some stuff, right? I mean, like, that's really a big deal. And so everything before that is just, I mean, you think about it. So that at that point in time, there's a lot more BC than there is AD, right? And so everything before that, we're just going to call it before Christ. You know what I mean? Like, really wrap your mind around like how many years that is. And they're going to say everything before that, we're just going to call it before Christ. I like I said, I don't think that people really, I mean, it's like you wake up in a world that just is, and you just don't really to think about why. And I think that is a big, I don't know. I don't think that can be oversold how big a deal it is. And again, to see what's happening now though, is them trying to call it BCE and CE. And then I have people like Kent Hovind, who are like supposedly big creationists, using those terms. And you're like, common era before the common era?
Yeah, why would you do that?
Like, literally, they're just removing Jesus out of there. That's all they're doing, because they're, I might have a little respect for them if they wanted to go back to the previous dating system, like, because that would be kind of interesting to find out what year we're in.
Yeah.
But they don't do that. They literally just they just remove year of our Lord and before Christ out of there.
Right? You got to remove God, Jesus, everything. You got to take it out of there. That's what they want to do. Yeah.
No, I don't know. I think that is too wild to really consider that. And yeah, so that all this stuff happens right when they believe the Dark Ages came in, the Theodosian laws, obviously, like around that same time period, they outlawed the Olympics, as we talked about the Olympics before. Paganism was outlawed. It almost sounds like somebody ruling with an iron with a rod of iron, like that. You're not allowed to worship those gods anymore. When again, like you would think the Romans of all people, they would get rid of their gods in place of a man they killed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the narratives don't. Like my friend Shapu says, make it make sense. It doesn't. If they don't believe in him, why change everything for that one dude? Excuse me, but one man. You know what I mean? Why change it?
Well, obviously
the
the normies who still don't want to believe, who have no faith, they'll try to say, "Oh, well, to control people," but you're like, they were already controlling people.
Yeah, they ran everything.
Pretty sure they were already in charge for a long time at that point when they decided to do that. So, like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
They were already controlling people. Oh, they wanted to control the Christians who, I mean, like,
By what? By making him a martyr and changing the calendar around him? That's not a control.
No, I mean, yeah, empowering the Christians in some kind of way. Like, it makes, yeah, it only makes sense that if this came from on high. It does not make sense that men did this. Again, like that does seem like that in order for these things to be established that the way they were done, it was like God ruling with a rod of iron. And that's why you think about the Dark Ages. Well, it was dark for somebody. It was dark for that serpent who was thrown into a pit for 1,000 years. It was real dark for him. And then you have the Enlightenment afterwards, when people are saying like how backwards things were during this time, when obviously they built the best stuff, all the greatest stuff happened during, like the greatest buildings in the world were built during this time of obviously primitive man. There was something going on.
I've covered so many on these shows about that 1800s period and Renaissance and all that, because like we're supposed to expect that cowboys and Indians in the days you walk down the streets in the Wild West with a 6-iron and you shoot a guy and you rode a horse and you lived in a shack. Meanwhile, you look at the buildings that they were building also, and these monolithic structures that they said were like a church or a post office now. And none of it makes sense. You're going to live in a shack and you're going to build this ridiculous building with giant size archways and all that. And none of that makes sense. And the buildings don't say they were built. They all say they were founded because they found them. That whole narrative of the cowboy is complete Hollywood in my mind. I don't believe that you went out to dinner and the guy looked at you cross-eyed. You could pull a gun, shoot him, and they just drag him outside and everyone keeps eating dinner and playing cards and all that. It's so silly to me.
I still want to believe Tombstone was real. I still want to believe that.
Hey, I want to believe in Star Trek and Star Wars too. I can still enjoy them, right? And just know that it's all a narrative. I don't believe that whole, look at the buildings that they were building at the same time as we were. And then don't forget the Civil War and all that. And everyone looks like they're poverty and impoverished stuff. But meanwhile, they're building these giant castle-like structures, like the ones in Australia, which was a prison colony. And within 20 to 100 years, they're building these crazy structures. How did all of the people back then suddenly get like amazing ability to build stuff that we can't even comprehend today? Where was this school of construction or whatever that they went to learn how to do it? They all just knew how to do it suddenly.
Right.
It's wild. They use every manpower and every piece of material and ever in that one town to build the church. And it does make, and then where's the rubble piles of all the things that they were supposedly building? I mean, everything in our history has been told us is a lie. And to me, the only truths I can find are in the Bible.
Amen.
That I can find, and I can correlate it to stuff I see in history and all that, and it makes sense then. But the narrative we get, it's all nonsense.
No, the one thing that makes no sense to me, and I said obviously there's no more place it's more exposed in America, is the idea that so we supposedly as a country rebelled against the British because of taxes. Then meanwhile, you get these aristocrats like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Ben Franklin, and all these people, and then they had the common people build them edifices to the heavens these 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 buildings that are castles, temples, and all this kind of stuff. Meanwhile, the people are living in squalor,
Right.
and they don't like people just accept this. And so obviously this was supposedly going on in Europe for all this time too. That you have to understand that if people are living so poorly, they are not going to just build that kind of stuff for kings all the time. It's like that's the thing. Go back to like what saying about like the Romans changing Constantine and the Theodosius the First and all that, changing the religion to Christianity. Do you know how often emperors were getting killed back in the day? How often they were getting, like, everything but like Julius Caesar and all. I mean, there was emperors just getting killed left and right, assassinated. That would still go on when they were tyrannical a-holes, right? Like you couldn't just say, because I'm the king, go build this. In the same way, you can't do that now, but yet it happened. So it makes no sense. Yeah, if the lower class, for one, they're super skilled lower class.
Yeah, how do they know how to
they-
build these monolith structures?
They can build all the stuff. The only thing that really makes sense is there was a technology that it was not as hard as we imagined it to be.
Right.
That's I think that's the only way, because you couldn't say it's like the whole going back way back to when I was doing Ancient Angels was these people trying to say that they used slave labor to build these pyramids when they were tombs to pharaohs, and like literally like they would have to work out the timeline where it would take 20 or 30 years to build one of these things. And so what are they building besides that? When like the pharaoh's deciding, I need this tomb, so I better start building it now because it's good, because I'm going to be dead in 30 years. So let's build it
Right.
now. It's got to be ready for when I'm dead. Why would you spend all your resources doing that? And why would anyone just be willing to do that? Dragging big megalithic blocks through sand and stuff. Meanwhile, dang, I'm hungry. Imagine how many people you have to feed when you're doing that. Like, the logistics of that kind of stuff is insane. The only thing that makes sense is it was not as hard as that. It did not take 30 years. They did know how to do stuff that we don't know how to do. And I think to me, that's more proof of anything that these things are just that some of this stuff has not been lost. It's been hidden. And like I said, I think it all makes sense in the little season. That's the only thing that makes sense to me right now.
And if you look at something like, have you seen that Cologne Cathedral that they said that I think it took over 600 years to build? And I mean, what are they handing down the plans? Well, I'll never see the end of this construction. Here you go. I'm willing down this to you, and they keep making it the same way. Like nothing's changed in all those years. And it looks like this Gothic structure. It also looks like it's been burned through something.
It looks like it was. Is that the one that looks like it was melted?
Yeah, well, I think no, this one's just dark and so forth. I don't know if it's melted, but there's plenty of them that you can find that too. But there's the structures that they say that were there's one out here, and I think it's in Olympia, Washington, that was built in like less than a year. And when you look at the size and the construction stuff, you couldn't even get the permits passed nowadays to try to build something like that. And who's building it? Like you said, is everyone in the county or wherever they are going and building this thing and then going home to their mud shacks, or not even going home? I mean, they just live there. I mean, you're going to put that thing together in a year. It's insane.
Here, we probably got to wrap it up here because we've been going on 3 hours. But I was
Shoot.
teasing this, and I think I got one I'll have to save. But I just want to share you this, guys. I saw this article the other day.
The tease.
And this is crazy. Yeah, we'll have more content. But check this out. So you see the skyscraper? This is a concept, and just check out what it says at the top of this. It says the next world's tallest building could be a 3,000 feet high battery. All right. You guys know about the old world technology. Is this possibly them starting to re-release some of this stuff? Humans have long built towering structures to showcase the power of empires, rulers, religions, and corporations. Today, more tall buildings are popping up than ever before, but skyscrapers could soon have a new purpose: storing renewable energy. And I'll I can link this article to you guys so you can read the whole thing. But I mean, to me, it's like the whole idea of free energy. Are they about to bring it back? I mean, because is that what they're trying to show you? Because it's like, it makes sense to me, like that. If you think, again, this is maybe a black pill moment, is like, is this like, are we coming to a reset here where they're not going to need us, but they'll need energy? And now is the time where they can, obviously, they put us in the poorhouse, and now they said, well, we got AI, we have robotics, and now we have free energy. We don't need y'all.
I also like in this article, they have to put their tag, and it that goes range all the way up to 3,300 feet. So there's your 33. It's in
It doesn't say 3,000. Yeah, there you go.
It's pretty much in all articles, it seems, when they talk about length or size. That or
Yep.
66. It's like a tagger. You know, they have to tag, you know, this is brought to you by 33.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, that's interesting. Yep. Yeah, so it's just crazy to me that it's like, yeah, this technology, it does make sense to me that this is something that, yeah, you look at the Antiquitech, there's all kinds of stuff, these spires, these things that they had more practical purposes than just the beauty of them. Even though, like, back in the day, they were beautiful too. Even though, like I said, the buildings now, these aren't, it's not beautiful. I mean, like, that's just, what is that?
No.
Like, there's no real style to that. That's just like, it does look like it. Maybe it just does have a more practical purpose. Maybe that's what it was supposed to. That's all that's supposed to be. Is it's literally about electricity. And yeah.
Before we go, did you have that one you showed me before we went on about with all the airships and stuff?
Oh, that's what I was going to say, but since you teased it,
okay, that's for next week. Tease it. You guys will have to watch the next live stream. It's an amazing photo.
Actually, you know what? I'll just I'll share that because I think that is interesting. Yeah, this is another article, and this will have to be a video I'm going to make probably pretty soon. Let's see.
All right.
It is okay. So this is wild right here. This right here, it's, if you go read the top of this article, it says, a cartoonist immersive vision of what Chicago's architecture could have been is on display in one of the city's new icons. And it said, this picture right here, it says, welcome to Turbineville, is a skyline made up of entries to the 1922 competition to design a new headquarters for the Chicago Tribune. And so the crazy part about this picture, let's see if I can get it. I think I got a better picture pulled up on my saved over here.
Yeah, many of the buildings were like docking stations, it says. Yeah.
Okay, so like I'll try to make this a little bigger so you guys can see it. Okay, screen. Okay, so what you see here is you see like a very, obviously very technologically advanced city with buildings and everything, really crazy looking buildings. But what you see a lot of is a bunch of airships. And what you see them is, like a lot of people say, like, I mean, so a lot of people who show old world tech, they show these things are docking at the tops of the buildings. They're like all mooring stations. And so somebody would see this now and they would say, oh, well, that's crazy. Like, that's obviously, that's a crazy idea of the future. Now, here's the crazy part about it is, so why would you say that? Just because the airships? Well, we know the airships existed back then. That's not conspiracy. That's straight up fact. Go look it up. But you might say that because, wow, that city looks really advanced. Well, you probably haven't seen what Chicago looked like back in the 1920s. And so here's some pictures of the buildings here. What it really looks like is the skyline is a little more dense, but the buildings are not any more advanced. These are buildings from the 1920s in Chicago. Isn't that interesting? Like, this is, look at that picture right there. That's a real picture. Now, does that look much different than that rendering?
No, just without the airships. So
the only real difference is, yeah, you do not see airships docking at these buildings. But they're all,
you get a lot of vanilla skies because of that in those old photos.
Yeah, like, I mean, this one actually looks like a real sky, so I'll give them that. Like, I can't tell. But I mean, look at that stuff right there. Looks very.
But we know they had Photoshop capabilities like in the early 1900s or before, because you can see postcards with giants and giant vegetables and things like that. So they had capabilities of modifying things. So
Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? On this one, it looks like you see the tops of these buildings. They don't look like they have the spires on the tops of these.
Right.
It looks like some of that stuff has already been removed.
Well, there's probably a ship connected to it, so they just edited it out.
Possibly. Yeah, but let's go back. So you see these pictures like this, and now look at that picture again. Is anything really that hard to believe that's in there? Because I see planes, I see airships. We already knew they had planes based on what they tell us back in those days. There's just airships everywhere. It's just it just looks more dense. Because I don't see any building there that looks too fantastical based on the ones I just looked at. Do you?
No, agreed.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, so. Anyways, that was kind of it on that. But I just thought that was interesting. I thought that like those two articles I saw just this past week. That, yeah, is this? I mean, just think about the timing of that coming out now. That they're displaying that picture. And this other thing, and them talking about them having a 3,000-foot high battery that's a skyscraper. Are they starting to shift the narrative where it's like, okay, so now this is going to be the future?
Was that revelation of method or whatever you say?
Well,
yeah.
You know, it's interesting that like, what's the big news around like companies like Boeing, like big airplane, business? That Boeing is like a big nightmare now. Like
everything's terrible and crashing, and they're responsible for those astronauts being stuck in the ice. That's what I understand.
Maybe that's what the real story is. That hey, this way of traveling, maybe this is antiquated, and maybe we've learned how to do the airship things better now, and maybe now we're going to use free energy in airships. How about that? That would be. That would be something.
Why would they do that? Why would they give away the power of charging us for the energy and selling it to us?
Because I think
they're taking it and then selling it back to us.
Well, because I don't think that they're going to re-release this kind of technology fully until you and I are either dead or in the poorhouse. And they're not. They don't need to take any more of our money. They're already in the process of bankrupting everybody. And so when they re-release this, it'll be the people in the haves, the haves, and obviously the have-nots will be us, and we will not be. Sorry, guys, we will not be getting to partake in the airships.
No airship.
We'll be in some concrete block, well at the bottom of that city skyline. Like
another disappointment. Dang.
No mooring stations. None of that for us. No free energy. Well, everything will be free, but it will cost us all our freedoms.
I like that. See, there's a quote.
Yeah, it'll be free-ish.
Free-ish. Now you're sounding very Jewish.
Yeah,
free-ish.
Yeah, free. Well, anyways, hey, Ceiling Fan Man, appreciate you coming on, brother. This was awesome. Sorry, chat, we did not do a good job of getting to any Q&A. That might have been Mandela effect that was on the thumbnail. I remember talking about that. But anyways, you got any closing thoughts, brother?
I just want to thank you and your chat for having me here. It's always nice to talk to a different audience. And so if you want to come on over and check out what I do, and we have a good time over there, just talk about very similar things. And I try to bring everything back at some point to scriptures and biblical narratives. Because I really do believe, like you said, that's where you're going to find the truth. And and I love looking and researching everywhere and anything. But at the end of the day, does it match up to the scriptures is the way I look at it. And so you've got to put everything through the test, either through biblical test or just yourself through the Holy Spirit. And you're going to get answers. Now, you won't get all the ones you want or the time you want, because maybe it's not something you need, and God knows what you need. And so we just have to understand where we live, make that relationship with God, and we'll work through this. We'll make it out, even if we don't get on an airship. We're going to see this through, and I believe in the best way possible. And thank you. It's such a pleasure to meet you and to have these conversations, and I look forward to more in the future. So thanks for having me.
Most definitely. Well, anyways, you guys, appreciate you. God bless all y'all. I'll see you guys very soon. All right, so we're wrapped up on here, and